Good evening. I call this meeting of the Water Commission to order at 6 p.m. Let roll call show that all commissioners are present. Appreciate everybody attending today. First, I'd like to take a moment of silence for our former commissioner, Ray Piston. Former Water Commissioner Ray Piston passed away last week. Ray served on the Water Commission from August of 2012 to March of 2019. He had to resign for medical reasons. He was a great asset to the commission, and he helped me a lot as I got on board. He also served the city of Garden Ridge. He volunteered with several organizations in the city. So I just want to take a moment of silence for Ray. Thank you. Let's please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is citizen comment period, and we have no one signed up or in attendance. So we'll move on to number 6, which is business items. First is A, approvals, minutes of the July 28, 2020 Water Commission regular meeting. Does anyone have any corrections to what was emailed to you? If not, can I have a motion to approve?
So moved to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I have a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the last meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next item B, discussion reports and updates. Water manager's monthly activity report, water pumping issues, usage from city wells, water system infrastructure mains repairs and/or projects in water or in our drought management. Turn over to water manager Jacob Parsons. And before I do that, you'd like somebody to introduce, I understand, right?
Yes, we do. We have a new water clerk. This is Michelle. Stand up and take a bow. Yeah. And she is our new water clerk, and she has been here for a week and a couple days. And so she just went through the billing process, and we're excited about that too. So, thank you.
Welcome.
So in the water report for this last month of July, you can see that we are trending upwards with our Trinity water, and we are coming down just a little bit with our Edwards. And the reason for that is we were in stage 1 with Edwards, which reduces our daily usage that we have to have. So we just went ahead and adjusted that with our Trinity. I also want to point out for this month, you'll also be seeing the next report. We've also done a couple different things. We are using our Trinity as a primary and our Edwards as a secondary as a test. This is the hottest month that we usually have, and we are trending to use more water this year than ever before. And so what we were trying to do is we're going to find out how much the Trinity wells can really push and produce, peak demands, all that stuff. It's real easy to put it in theory, but to put it practical use, we're going to get some real numbers, and we're going to be being able to use that data for some other stuff, and which we'll talk about later. That being said, we had a bacteriological sample that hit positive for total chloroform in our distribution system. We resampled and we retested. Everything came back negative. The sample was due to a windy, it was a windy day when the operator took the sample, and there was a tree behind that we believe something got in there. They're real sensitive tests. And what we did was we are in the process of talking to the homeowner, trying to get that limb removed so we won't have that issue in the future. So as far as that, we also had to test some raw samples, and I do not like the way this is stated because it was a total coliform. It quote unquote failed, but as for raw water, that's what you have sometimes in raw water. That's why you chlorinate the water, and so that's what we have there. So it technically was not a failure for the raw water. It would have to be an E. coli for TCEQ to fail it. But since it says bacteriological, that's why we put that in there. So I'm going to adjust that. If you can look up our meter replacements, this last month, in July, we had 5 replacements. 1 was cracked, and the other 4 stopped working or they went backwards. The AMI scope of work was ready for bid. We got that all prepared to go out. You'll hear more about that later. The 2252 wastewater project, that got prepared and went out for bid. You'll hear about that later. We also had a well number 9 fail at Schoenthal. And what happened was in the transfer pipe that was going up, the pressure built, and it was either due to the installation or the material that failed, and it put pressure on it, and it kept eating away till it finally blew a hole. This wouldn't be as big of a problem, but it also blew a hole right into our electrical. And when it hit the electrical, it shorted out, and we had to replace all that electrical. So we're right now waiting on wire to come. Once we get the wire, we're going to be installing it. We're looking at next week to have that back installed and put back in place. Also, we had a hot summer in July, or a hot July, and we had 2 AC units go down, and we had to repair those as well. And finally, this last billing period, we had a cycle for some bills that were calculated with only 2 days of water, resulting in low water bills. Once we assessed the situation, we took a daily average of water use and only charged for the same billing period. And we had some issues in June with our equipment, the AMR equipment. We had the rep come out. He looked at the hardware, the software, all the different things, and this was 2 days later. Well, after he looked at all, we got everything up to date and back on par. We had someone go out, do some readings. It was right around 400 readings that we got. Well, then when the next month came around, the procedure wasn't followed to erase the last one and put it back in. So what we did is we've gone over procedure, we've rewritten it to where it's more clear, and we've done some more training. So that is something that we have looked at. Also, we also have a check and balance with the front staff, and they have put in place a procedure in order to make sure that this doesn't happen as well. So with that, does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Parsons. Yes, so starting on my right, any questions for Mr. Parsons? Left? Commissioner Moore?
Yes, Mr. Parsons, one question. On the water bills, you took the daily average, or you took 1 day's average and expanded it out for those 400 or so people, or?
No, sir. So let me do a better job explaining. So once we found out the issue, it was a 38 days. And so what we did is we took a reading again, which would put them in more water use than they would have, right? It would put them on upper tier. So what we did was we just averaged it from that point back, and then we calculated back for the billing period of 31 days. So that was the fairest way we could give.
I understand now, thanks. I was wondering how you extrapolated that. I get it. Thanks.
I have one comment. You said we had 5 meter replacements. 1 was cracked and 5 no flow. Is that a frequent occurrence?
We have an average of 2 meters a month that are bad, that are either go backwards or they just don't work, and they have a no read.
And usually you don't find that out until the day you take the meter readings, right?
Correct.
So it could have been 1 day or all month.
Yeah, and those customers receive the minimum water bill. So if they used 100,000 gallons or 50,000 gallons, we don't know.
we got billed for 5, basically. Okay, thank you, sir. Okay,
Mr. Chair,
yes, sir.
may I say something about the report? Commissioners, I'd ask you to make sure you really understand what he was just talking about, what our water manager was talking about when it came to what we did with the water bills. And the reason why is because there are people out there that are spreading a rumor that we did some averaging and we did some guessing and all this other stuff. And the undeniable fact is they will not be charged for a single drop of water that they didn't use or vice versa. It's just the way it ended up being billed. I'll tell you that he did a superb job figuring out how to make that happen. But it's a little wonky when you get this bill and you hear that it was averaged out. But so I'd just ask you, if you don't feel that you can confidently explain what happened, please contact him and make sure you can, because as the water advisory board, all of the kind of the ambassadors to explain to people, if somebody says, hey, you're on the water commission, I think I got ripped off on this, because there are people that are saying it right now. And I can tell you with 100% certainty that nobody is being charged for water they didn't use. It's just the way the billing happened, and it was an unfortunate circumstance, but they did a fantastic job figuring out how to do it and do it exactly the way it should have been done, fairly. So please, give them a call if it, because frankly, it took me a couple times before I felt like I could turn around and explain it to somebody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Thompson. Yes, I found this reading social media also, and I contacted Mr. Parsons right away to see what it was open, to understand that. Once I understood, yes. Now, another thing is, once you calculate it down to the day it was actually taking 31 days or whatever, then that's the new reading. So that's in the system now. So that next month, it goes back to that reading, correct? So
Correct.
that way, they're still gonna, like the mayor said, you still get, but that part will be in next month's bill. So they're not getting charged extra tiers. Any additional questions at this point? Thank you for that discussion. Okay, next item is number 2. Items applicable to the Water Commission discussed at the August City Council meeting. City Council approved our recommendation to credit for the leak adjustment to 9296 Garden Ridge Drive, a total of $772.01. City Council also approved our recommendation to issue an invitation to bid for an advanced water meter infrastructure, an AMI system, and a meter data management system, MDMS. I also reported that we had 2 other leak adjustments that the commission reviewed, which the commission made recommendations to the city administrator to take action. And I provided a brief update to the council on the water commission projects. Any questions on city council meeting, either side? Thank you. Next is number 3, advanced metering infrastructure, AMI, and meter data management system. Discuss and make recommendation regarding the bid. Sorry about that. The bid proposal for the AMI and MDMS system. As mentioned previously, City Council approved the advertisement for bid solicitation for AMI system. Bids were open to the public in a public forum at 4 p.m. Last Friday, August 21st. The subcommittee met yesterday, most of the day, to evaluate the bids per the scoring criteria provided in the bid package. You should have a letter that was from Tri-Hydro at each of your stations. I know not much time to look at it beforehand, but I'd like to just ask either Mr. Clark or Mr. Lackey to come up and just basically make the recommendation.
Thank you. Good evening. So you have before, this is a true group effort here. Chris and myself working on this with the help of Jacob, city staff, and subcommittee, Jesse Valdez and James Miller, putting our heads together to get the documents on the street and then solicit bids from the various companies. So last Friday, we received 4 bids, and they're a more detailed bid. So if we go to this particular sheet, this is an itemized of each of the 4 bidders, and if we'll start with that, we can kind of work our way through here. So the 4 bidders were Aquametrics, and they sell the census meter. Core in Maine, they sell the Neptune meter. Lubin Enterprises, they're a contractor that was bidding on the installation of the Camstrup meter. Camstrup will be the meter provider. And then HydroPro is the distributor for the master meter. So the first bid was the bid quantities for the various size meters that we're going to install in the system, anywhere between 1 inch, 3/4, and throughout the various meters there. And okay, the screenshot up here is the overall bid, basically the relevant bid documents, and then a summary of each of the items. And I wanted to go in detail to the various items here in the bid. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So this is the purchase of the meters, the hardware, the meter data management system, and at this point, the summary of these, tabulations of these, the low bid for this portion of the project is Camstrup at $538, followed closely behind by Neptune, Core and Maine at $544,289. The next option is option 1, and that is the purchase of the customer portal system. And that has an annual cost. And again, with that annual cost, again, Camstrup has the low bid, $5,700, and followed closely by Neptune. The second option is the actual installation of the meters that were purchased as part of the initial bid, and that is the labor and materials to go out and physically remove the existing meters, install the new meters with necessary hardware, labor, working around the vaults and meters, and get those installed. So again, that's option 2, and the low bid was Camstrup again, and Census had the second bid there. But as you see on the bottom of that column there, we totaled the base bid, we totaled option 1, we totaled option 2 to give you numbers there. And there's some color coding there, and that reflects some qualifiers that were in the bids. The pink total you'll see is on the Census bid. They had an escalator clause in their numbers for the meter data management system and the customer portal system. They were quoting a 3% annual increase. The orange bid you see was also, they included or broke out their bonds separate from their number, but the bonds are something that's part of the project. So again, the bids had to be updated and corrected. And then the yellow, based on master meter, there was a mathematical error in their extension, and so we corrected that number. So as we come together with the base bids, option 1, option 2, Camstrup is the low bid, and then followed closely by Neptune, master meter, and then Camstrup. I'm sorry, Aquametrics is third, and Camstrup is our master meter is fourth. We asked for an option 3, and that was for a financing term. only two of the bidders provided a financing, and each is slightly different, but roughly it's about 2.5% over a variable 5 to 10 year period. Each had some differences there, but I think the plan moving forward, we'll take this option to council, but that's definitely the reserves are available in the water fund to fund this out of cash reserves. And that's an option to be discussed at the council meeting. Option 4 is to replace the meter vaults and lid. And that was a number that's there in case we run into problems out in the system with the condition of the existing meter vault and lid. Option 5 is part of the bid proposal is a propagation study, basically to look at the topography of the Garden Ridge area and look at where the stations would be located, basically on the elevated tanks behind us here, City Hall site, and then the topography of the land and where they can get radio coverage to. And all of them, we're looking at about a 97% coverage, and some on the far edges of the system may need to have a cast iron lid replaced with a fiberglass lid to allow better radio reception as we do the study. Throughout the process, each of the manufacturers said, well, this propagation study is a computer study, it's a desktop study. We get in the field, we're seeing good coverage, so just gives us a base cost in case we need to change out some lids and look at that in the future. So. The deducted bid price is basically as we replace the existing meters in the field, they have some salvage value, and the contractors were allowed to give us a price if they want to keep those meters and salvage them themselves, or whether they want to turn them over to the city. And that was a cost there. You can see the cost range fairly great there. So at this point, so based on, let's go to the next table. Do this one. So part of our bid was an evaluation of each of the meter vendors based on several factors, and they include experience, their product maturity, future roadmap of the company. Did they meet the requirements and capabilities of the system? Did they comply or give us the project schedule? Basically, we had a 180-day duration after award of the project, after notice of award of the notice to proceed on the project. Was the base proposal, including costs and project scope in accordance with the specifications, and then look at a 20-year life cycle of the bids. 20-year life cycle was necessary because of the annual cost associated with with the bid items, particularly the basically the management and maintenance of that system. So as you see on this table here, again, the scoring, again, Camstrup had the highest number, 148 in scoring, followed closely by Neptune and Master Meter and Census. So third scoring is looking at annual costs. And this table. So let's, to the right, right of this table right here, see I'm on the board. So you'll see, again, we tabulate the base bid, option 1, option 2, option 3 on the finance wasn't part of the evaluation, but, and then the options 4 and 5 that we discussed. So the annual cost is tabulated there. you'll see MDF's annual cost, and that's the cost to operate the system. And we looked at a 20-year life and 0.5% interest based on federal inflation rates. So we came up with the present worth of those future costs. We looked at the customer portal annual cost and present worth of that. And then, so on the far right, we've got the tabulation of the base bid, option 1, option 2. And then we've got a life cycle cost based on the average of the cost. So we can see that the third one down is Camstrup, and that total, their total cost for the equipment and then a projection of what that future cost is going to be gives us the lowest number. And then the others follow behind. It looks like basically the difference between 1 and 2, the installation cost for the second was a little bit higher, and then their annual costs were higher too. So the recommendation tonight that you have is to, based on the scoring of the various options, is to award Camstrup through their provider, Lubin Enterprises. Lubin is a contractor that supplied the bonds for the project, and Camstrup will be working under them. They supplied the bid bond, and they also supplied, or will supply, the performance and payment bonds as we move into a contract. Okay, on that. So we've been in the process of running through this, getting clarifications on the various items in the bid package, looking at references, calling references, getting calls back. But I think as we sit here tonight, we're comfortable recommending that the city proceed with a bid to Camstrup. We've got a little show and tell here. Jacob, can you help me with this? Pass some equipment around. So, Jacob, why don't you talk a little bit about what you got there? Here, I'll help you pass it around.
Sure. This is our current meter. This is a 3/4 inch iPearl that we have. This is a we have fittings on the ends of it as if it were to go into a 1 inch application. This is the next one is you see the antenna on this one here. This is the AMI meter. This will do AMI and AMR once it's in the ground. This is a polymer base. This is not what we're getting, but this is what we have to show you. And basically what it'll do is once it's in the ground, it'll receive the signal from the fixed base station, or it will, if we had a drive-by, able to put it in the drive-by, it'll also read it for redundancy. This one you have right here is very close to what we're going to be getting. That is, it doesn't have the antenna, so that is only the AMR, not the AMI. So the AMI will have the antenna, the AMR will not. And then lastly, but that is pretty much the meter we're going to be getting. Does that make sense? So that's the same meter with the antenna. That's the one we'll be getting for the 3/4 inch. This one here is a 1 inch. This is a stainless steel body. It has the same face on it. Are you turning me down? Or can't hear me? The same face on it, and basically it's gonna be able to attach to all of the 1 inch meters that need to be replaced with a 1 inch. So they need, if they need. Is it?
Okay, so this one,
That's a 3/4 inch.
3/4 inch, but it has a 1 inch connection.
Right, those are the adapters for the 1 inch and the lay length of 10 3/4 inches.
Okay. Same meters.
And feel free to wash your hands afterwards. We have wipes for everybody.
So each of the meter vendors has multiple meter body composition that they offer. So you've got everything from what Marisa has there. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
has the plastic body, or the non-metallic body that Marisa had with the AMI. Let me just hold it up. Vanna, come on. So this is the AMI because of the radio antenna. This is in your meter box. And so this is what's going to transmit to the receiving station, say at the elevated tank, and be able to collect the data. But the body is a non-metallic body. We specified in the bids that these be fully metallic, so they could bid the brass or the stainless steel. The brass obviously is a metal alloy, and historically they've used lead to create the brass. So the move in the water industry is to be lead-free in your system. Lead solders, no lead in any of your plumbing or piping. So so the industry's moved to the plastic or the composites, even stainless steel, depending on corrosivity in your soil and where you're at, and the brass. So what we're buying is this fully brass, and this is the brains of the operation. So this particular meter is manufactured by Camstra. So it's the body is built by Foundry here in the U.S. and then the foundry sends it to the factory where the brains are put on, and basically we come out with a complete meter. So in this is an AMR, but the meter head you've seen with the AMI brand brains that would fit on the same body. So they sell their meter as an AMR and AMI depending on what you're buying. So in the brains, the operation are lithium batteries, 10-year life. The manufacturer's offering a 20-year warranty. The first 10 years are at no cost to the city. 10 years after that, 10 to 20, is a prorated warranty. So if the city has a bad meter, take it out of the ground, put a new one in, send it back to the factory, and get another one back that first 10 years. James, turn it over to you a little bit. You had quite a bit of discussion, thoughts about the security of where we're communicating between each of the customers and the central processing of data records here at City Hall, and how that data information is safeguarded, and how we're safeguarding our customers. If you want to talk about that a little bit.
Thank you. Yes, I can talk about that a little bit. We did a pretty thorough review on the security systems for all these different various vendors. I don't want to get into too many details because a lot of this was proprietary information, but all of them do follow industry standards, and some of them go above and beyond. Everything is encrypted, and it's cloud-based architectures hosted by, all the data is hosted in the United States, and everything that's in there, they do a very good job of both protecting our customers' data that will be in the system and ensuring that all the reliability and the authenticity of the data as it flows through the system. There's several different safeguards in there, leading edge encryption all the way to locking down firmwares and overall control of the cloud-based architecture. If anybody has any specific questions, I'd be happy to go into those for any of the bids that were out there.
So a big part of this is the installation. And so when we also took bids on the wastewater force main work, and that's the installation of the central part of the wastewater system, the pipelines. But part of that bid was an alternate bid to install the meters. Just we wanted a way of checking what the meter manufacturers were bidding as installation costs versus general contractors that do pipeline work in the area. And the cost was substantially less for the meter manufacturers to do the installation for both of the bids that we got on that. So we won't even talk about that tonight. But they will typically, a typical installation is they'll have a 5-man crew. They'll have one person lay out meters along the route. They'll have a 3-man crew that comes in and actually does the labor of taking the, somewhere we lost the couplings here, back here. So, but anyway, they'll basically install the meter, tighten in the fittings, and get the meter installed mechanically. And then behind that will be a data recorder that comes in. You saw on each of the meters is a barcode, and they'll make sure the meter's functional, talking back to City Hall, the data's being recorded, recording and basically giving a start to the program to record what the old meter had on as far as usage and registering where we are as we start the system, making sure that's all working, and they'll move on through the system. They said their crews can average about 200 meters a day. A good day they can get up to 300, depending on how close they are together and details involved with that. So this will be moved pretty quickly. Very critical while the meter is being installed that we protect the residential customer. Obviously, we're working in the dirt, and we'll be notifying the residential customers, and they'll be safeguard that plumbing so we don't get dirt into their plumbing system. Nobody wants to come with some dirty ice or black water coming out of the pipe. So again, very important in the process, and the crews are trained in this, and each of the manufacturers were competitive in their bids basically on those installation costs. Happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Parsons, do you have anything to add?
No, sir. I guess one thing, we went through the customer portal again today and kind of brushed up on everything that they went through, and it's pretty robust as well. Customers are going to be able to see all of their usage, and if they use it the next hour, they can look and see that it's updated. They'll be able to see that. And if they have anything issues, if they want to set settings, like I don't want to go over 15,000 gallons or whatever it is, they can set that. They can also be notified of alerts, a burst pipe, a leak. All those things could be directly sent to the customer, and there's several ways to do that. They also have options for phone calls, text, and emails to be notified of different things. So if we had a boil water notice and stuff like that. So it's pretty robust being able to, and it gives a lot of flexibility to the customers to be able to see and access all that data as well.
Jacob, you want to talk a little bit too about the salvage value or the meters? We're going to collect 1,600 plus meters out in the system and bring a pile back to you. And some thoughts on that?
Yeah, so there's some questions out there. I've done some looking into what it costs to buy something like this used, refurbished meter or tested. And the meters that we currently have, iPearls, are guaranteed for 20 years for the end-to-end being able to be accurate in their being able to read meters. They also have the same warranty of the 10 years and prorated for the next 10. So that being said, there's other cities out there that are looking for these meters. The reason why we're looking at an AMI system in the first place was because Census no longer supported that MXU. Well, that means other cities also have that same MXU that's not supported, and we might be able to sell them these as well. So that's an option that we've looked at. It's going to take some work, and so we're going to have to weigh out if we're going to do it ourselves and what that looks like, and then if they just take them off our hands. So.
Okay. Chris, hard work on all this. Any comments or questions?
I think the only thing to add would be that the salvage value. We're not making a recommendation on that, and that's something that can be decided as we move forward. But I'm just trying to find that. So salvage value would be the deductible, and for Camstrup, their deduction would be $4,237. So I guess it's, as we move forward with, you know, whether it's an award or moving forward with the recommendation, that's something to consider with the agreement and based on Jacob's, you know, his labor force and if it makes more sense for the city just to have them take it, or if you want to take that upon and salvage that as a city.
Speak up.
I'm sorry?
Can you speak up a little bit?
I'm sorry. So I guess we would make that, you know, a decision that we would make at the time of the agreement signing. So,
Are you saying the $4,000 salvage value, that's all the 1,600 meters? Is that what you're saying?
yes, sir.
That was the Camstrup's bid.
Right. So we listed out roughly, I want to say it was like 1,650 3/4 inch, or excuse me, 1 inch meters. And so they gave us a price per unit that they would salvage these things for. So all the meters within the system, the total value in their, you know, in their bid is the $4,237. So that would be basically a credit back to the city.
But we can put those on the open market or let it go or Craigslist and other
Yes, sir.
cities.
Correct, yes. So that's an option that the city has. But we wanted to leave that in there to give a little bit of flexibility in the analysis of this. So.
Okay. Then can you, maybe Jacob, when they open the system, when they're installing the new meters, what are we going to do? I know you don't want to get dirt in there, but how about bacterial contamination? How are you going to manage? You going to have chlorine rags or dip or?
Yeah, so it's real simple. Usually when you have these things, you just flush them out. So if there is something that got in there, you would turn on the hose spigot and you would just rush it throughout that hose spigot and make sure it gets out of that system. At the worst case scenario, that's typically what you do is flush it.
Just flush it with water from the system?
Correct, yeah, there's enough chlorine in the system to kill the bacteria that would be getting in there. And we would flush it all out before it went anywhere else. That's the standard practice for AWWA and for TCEQ.
Okay, then on these meters, they're hooked up. We have towers, repeaters that have to go to a central station.
So our central station will be here located on our large elevated storage tank, and that's where we'll be collecting all our data from. Different companies had different ideas of how they would do that because they had different strengths and how they would see. I talked to a young lady out of El Paso, and they were able to get with a cast iron lid 9 miles away. They were still able to get signal with the AMI system, and we're not 9 miles in radius.
Abstract actually did a live test back
Yes.
earlier this year. So they actually went around and put meters under the lid, tried it. He had a 90-foot antenna sitting up here in the parking lot.
Yeah,
So-
and we'll probably be almost twice that on the tank.
But you're going to put antennas around the city.
No,
One
sir.
antenna on the tank. Just one antenna. 2 antennas, yeah.
2 antennas. There's one on the water tower right here by City Hall and one down on the 2252 tank.
Correct.
That's that was the standard configuration. There was a bid that had additional antennas throughout the city. That is not what we're recommending though.
What redundancy is built into this system?
So the redundancy for the AMI system is that it's collecting data all the time. So if it went down, it just holds and waits for it to come back up, and then it'll just send all that data straight to our system. With the package, we will have access to individuals that can come and do the repairs and look at the AMI system. The other option we have is it can be taken out, put into a truck, and use it as an AMR system. So that is also an option that can be had. So that would be the redundancy of it.
And it looks like the bid is for about 1,600 meters, right? 1,620 meters or something of that nature. We're having about an average of 2 meters go bad per month. What's the replacement type deal with that? Is that under their 10-year warranty that you talked about? They just come out and do that? Now, does Camstruck do that, or do our folks do that?
Both. So right now, the meters that we currently have, they replace them if they're going bad. If they break, they don't replace them. We have to purchase them. So this last July, we had 5 go bad. They replaced 4 of them. We had to eat 1 of them because it broke. We're going to be with brass bodies, so that doesn't happen anymore. And we were finding that several of our meters were breaking. So brass bodies, and then if anything happens, the 2 key things are we don't have to wait 30 days to find out that we've been leaking. It'll tell us quickly. We'll be able to replace it, get a new one in there, and then that meter that we take out will be replaced with a new meter that we will get.
Awesome. Now, I know, I think I asked this question maybe in June, something myself. The subcommittee, we talked about, but customer education, this is nothing to do with customer. The customer portal, all of that, that's on us as the city, or where does that lie?
So I asked that question today, and it's a very good question. H2O Analytics is who runs their customer portal and their the AMI infrastructure brain, and we can push out notifications, we can send emails, and we can notify all of our customers. If we have data for emails and all that, we can push all that data out, or pamphlets or whatever we want to tell them, to let them know how to get into this new portal. It's an app you can use it on your phone, you can look at it on your computer, and we can send that out through that device, through that system.
Yeah, our population is, a little above average, you know what I mean? So, and age is what I'm talking about. So we want to make sure that it's user-friendly.
We are fully staffed now, we can help with that.
All right.
So, yeah, no, that's something that we know that is gonna be something that we're gonna have to look at and help with. And so, yeah, it's something we've taken in consideration.
And not all our customers, I'm sure, will have customer portals just for that reason. So we still have phone communication. If the system is, we're notified that there's a leak or need attention, we'll just pick up the phone and call them, right? So we still got the old phone call, drive by, call, knock on the door.
A-track.
Right.
Smoke signals.
To make a quick point on that, there are how-to videos to show you how to do a lot of this stuff. The training is embedded in there. To be honest, I can't remember which contractor did which options there, but there are training available to both the staff and to our customers. And a lot of the stuff is built in, even if the customer doesn't go in and set up the customer portal. There's still defaults where we'll automatically email, text message, whatever we have set up to send that customer. For example, leak detection, built in. If you have a leak, the system's automatically going to tell Jacob. And if Jacob wants to set it up, Mr. Parsons wants to set it up, he'll send an email or text message to that person immediately without them having to do anything.
That's cool.
Knock on the door.
Yeah.
You gonna have this on YouTube too?
Likely, yes.
We'll switch over here to the right-hand side and see if our other commissioners on this side have any questions. Mr.
Yeah, just out of curiosity on the evaluation factors, and just briefly, because I'm sure you've got it down, I was glad to see that the recommended contractor had scores of 5 in experience, product maturity, and requirements and capabilities. I just wanted the experience, that would be to the Lubin Enterprises. Is that what you're talking about, that particular company, or does that kind of go back to the Camstruck? Can you explain the difference between the first 3 and then on the project scheduled that they got a 3 on that instead of a perfect score? I just wondered what that meant.
Sure. So when we're talking about Lubin Enterprises and Camstruck, so again, Lubin Enterprises is a supplier, and Camstruck, okay. So and Camstruck is actually the manufacturer of the unit itself. So when we looked at the experience, and I guess I'm going to call it the evaluation committee, it was the opinion of the committee that the experience was there, and that they had, installed and had adequately explained their installations, you know, how many they've done, their past history. It's not a company that started last year. So they have, you know, they have a pedigree, if you will. So you can see kind of across the board that, you know, the experience, the committee felt that of the vendors that submitted, everybody met that criteria that was laid out in the bidding documents sufficiently. When we move down to the project schedule and we see threes across the board, the threes were simply because we had one vendor that supplied, albeit not in a Gantt chart as it was requested, but they had laid out a timeline of 0 to 6 months, which again, going back to our criteria in the bidding documents, if it was 0 to 6 months, you received the full points. Anything less than that, it declined as the schedule was either absent or not there, or in some cases they may have explained that we can begin, you know, 60 days after notice to proceed. So in a way that was still a schedule, but not telling us their timeline to complete the construction.
I understand.
Sure.
Thank you, I appreciate
You
that. I
bet.
was thinking maybe it was like past performance, meeting schedule, deadlines type stuff, but
Sure.
that doesn't sound like that was an issue.
That was actually a criteria that we did include as part of requirements and capabilities, that if they had any litigation, if you will, that was ongoing, then that needed to be disclosed as part of, I guess, their disclosure, so.
I also had another question on their bid. I was just curious, for option 2, they were about half the price of the highest bid on there. And I just wondered why theirs stood out as a little bit lower. Just wanted to make sure that they didn't miss anything, or you felt pretty comfortable they knew what they were bidding on that option 2. And I it was weird to me to see it. That seemed to be the biggest option that had the biggest differences.
Sure. So in terms of and I'm going to use the Camstrup as the example. Pat kind of went into detail about the installation process. We actually, these were some questions that we wanted further explanation on, and so that was actually a question that we discussed with Camstrup today. So hearing that kind of process, and a lot of these folks begin to have a process in place to speed it up. You know, time is money is kind of their mantra. So with that, you know, and after hearing that explanation of this is their process, their unit prices that they're proposing seem very viable and realistic. And we did have some questions about the installation, what that entailed and what was included. So as we passed around the brass body, this one here, Jacob, if you want to kind of show the installation of what's really going to happen. So if you look, we have a 1-inch connection and we're tying that to a 3/4 inch meter. So those two fittings that Jacob's kind of taking off, that's the extent of the installation. So I mean, you can see that it's a relatively quick, and so I think they averaged 8 minutes is what they said. You can see where that comes to play with a pretty simplified installation method.
And thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. I think Mr. Parsons cleared it up just a minute ago. There's not going to be any PVC bodies or whatever those plastic materials made of. They're all going to be brass bodies.
Right.
That's,
So
when it came across, that really confused me.
Yes.
But you probably explained it. It's all brass.
that's correct, yes. So the body itself is all brass. The meter or the brains is the composite. So that you could, it's a brass body with a composite meter, I guess.
Sounds good. I was concerned when I saw those plastic threaded ends on there, and I was thinking they might crack, but it sounds like that's not an issue then.
Actually, the issue with that is generally a cross thread. So you develop a leak within the meter. Yes,
Gotcha.
correct.
Just the last question, just to put it together in my head. From the city water line coming in, from the main on the city side and the customer side, are those both copper coming in, or is it PVC on on one end? I forgot, but it's going to match up with that Pearl meter anyway, I assume. So it's just going to have to be, the length is going to have to be adjusted if they're not the exact same length. Is that a good?
So the lay length of the 1-inch meters are 10 3/4 inches. This with the ends will be 10 3/4 inches. So it's basically like taking this out and taking the old one out and putting this one in. There should be no difference. And the material on the customer side is up to them. We don't mandate what they put on that side, but it shouldn't matter.
Understood. Thank you. I appreciate the way y'all laid this out. It looks good to me.
Commissioner Westbrook? Last.
I will try not to get in the weeds. Just quick clarification on the portal. You mentioned several times app-based, but when we had talked earlier, there was some indication of a web-based option. Is that not in this project any longer?
Yeah, you can get online and get on the customer portal, but it also has an app as well. And they have push notifications. So if you have the app and something happened, we as the purveyor can send out a notice to all those or the ones that we need to see in a fenced area of what's going on in that area, and they will get an alert on their phone. So that's just an option, that's just an extra, but they can get it on, they can see it on the website. Not only that, but we can also put a link to paying bills and stuff online as well. So they just hit the link and it goes straight to the URL that where they can pay for their bill.
Can I add on to that real quick? I'm sorry. There's an Android app, there's an iOS app, and it can also be operated off of 4 different browsers. I don't want to try to do them all from memory, but it's pretty much something there for everybody.
And you mentioned H2O Analytics was providing the portal piece. Are they then responsible for updating these apps and taking care of all that?
Correct. All the updating they do. If we need help with anything our end, we can customize a lot of it. We can put our city seal on there. We can do a lot of different things. We can have a bunch. It's very versatile in what they can do, and they help. I talked to them about us being trained to be able to manipulate and do things. As of right now, they still do it all, but they are working towards being able to teach and train so others can do it.
All right, moving down the list then. You mentioned the cloud-based system. What part of the customer data is actually going to be in the cloud? It would seem to me that's just the water usage. Is that correct?
I'm not exactly sure what fields are in the database. I didn't get that specific detail about where they store that, but I would assume that customer name, address, account number, and water usage would probably be all stored in that database on the encrypted, let's see, they are on the Google Cloud is where they store that. They use some Amazon Web Services also in their architecture.
Okay, I hope that moving forward that we check on that, because really all they need is an identification number and the water data. There's no reason for them to have customer addresses or anything like that in the third party. We need that on the billing side, but they just need a way to match the customer to the meter. Yeah.
I'll check right now.
And I, we may not know that it's not critical. I just want to make sure that you mentioned that being in the cloud and meeting all the security requirements. Certainly on the city side, we want to make sure the customers know what that is, right? So, we don't want that to be a question for people. And kind of tied to that, maybe more importantly, but this portal integration and the utility billing, and then there's information tied into your system as well on the SCADA side. How is this integrated and who is responsible for doing that?
So they will do all of that, integrating into our billing system and the SCADA and all that. They will do all that. With the SCADA system, I'm not looking at putting a lot of data in, integrating that, a lot of it right now. I don't think it's necessary with what we have. But as far as the billing, it's absolutely necessary. It's going to make life a lot easier. So it's something that they will do from A to Z. I asked them about that today.
Again, I would recommend moving forward that gets a very close look, because again, there's no real, we want to be able to do the billing, but as far as the part that they have, when it ties into the broader network, you want to minimize that as much as possible so that there's no, we don't add a vulnerability in it. And so my concern, anytime we do this, when we get a contractor to come put a system in, they're looking at the tie-in and their system. They're not really concerned about what it does to you on the back end. So I just hope that's part of the discussion.
If you don't mind, I did ask about customer service with the individuals I've talked to in the past, and they have all given glowing recommendations of customer service, that they will not leave till we're satisfied, or that they were satisfied till they were satisfied.
And then on the SCADA side, unless you actually plan on using it, I would not plug them in there. If you know, not have anything that moves hardware in the cloud somewhere. That's scary to me. But anyway, neither here nor there on that question. What about, you mentioned it has the 2 antennas. What if one of them fails? What's either the antenna or the cabling from the antenna into the system? Where are the failure points that we should worry about?
So what, if you don't mind, so if we have a failure, they will have someone that will be able to come and look at it and repair. That's part of the customer portal annual cost, is for them to be able to come out and repair those types of things. That's part of the service that they offer. And if we are down for some time, that data will be collected, and as soon as it comes back online, it will all be dumped back into the system, and it'll be all updated.
On to that point that Jacob was talking about, there is an additional package, if you will, that you can add. And I believe it was like $2,800 per year. So what that is it's kind of a rapid response to a situation like that they would respond within 48 hours, excuse me. And that is an annual cost. So if we were going to look at that, we would probably add that into the life cycle cost. It would probably add about, I'm going to say maybe about $50,000, $60,000 to the present worth value of that.
How long, so the data, while it's waiting for the connection again, the data is retained in the meter, and if so, how long can it actually retain data? How much?
These meters can retain data for 90 days. And we can also do laptop readings if there was some circumstance where we need to, where you can come and actually read the meter just the way, similar to the way we're reading them now.
Okay, so then that leads to my last question, which you already talked about a little bit, but Commissioner Haldeman mentioned there's a huge difference in annual cost, which is concerning. So when we did the review, you know, is it, well, they didn't give us the extra antenna, or the portal's a whole lot cheaper? What was our feeling for why? I mean, the majority of the difference in the bid prices, it looks like it's the annual cost and the present value of that. So I just want a level of confidence that technical folks are satisfied that it's a legitimate difference and not a underbid. And the second part of that is, what's the guarantee to the city that that annual cost is not going to change significantly? How much allowable increase is there in the contract, or how does that get looked at?
First question, I'm going to turn back over to you. Mr. Mueller. Didn't one of the bidders, 3 of the bidders used Google and Amazon. The other one one of them had their own. Is that why maybe that one's higher?
True, I mean, we're guessing here, right? But the high bid that you see on there is a proprietary system that is, all of it is maintained by the company that runs the AMI system, or that's selling the AMI system. These other companies, we assume, have cut costs by going ahead and outsourcing some of those cloud-based services to people who do that. So that's probably why their costs are a little bit low. Now, why this one is particularly lower than the others, I'm not 100% sure on that. All the features when you compare all these, certainly across the, I'm not sure if you're talking about the customer portals and specifically or the yearly cost for the AMI systems, but all of these are very similar in structure and in features. The differences are I don't want to say negligible, but certainly minor.
Following up, though, your feeling from what you read in the bid documents is that the risk, the bid price risk is on the company? In other words, we're not gonna get something later that says, oops, sorry, we bid too little. And then obviously the other side of that coin is, if it's on the company, what if they can't? You know, what if they can't cover the difference? I mean, what is the,
So I'll take
mitigation, I guess?
the first part of that, certainly. That's part of our review process when, for the references and talking about these, and talking to people that own these. The one that we are recommending, the CAMSTRUM system, I forget how many municipalities just in the U.S., they're fairly new to the U.S. scene, they're a European country, but they have hundreds of thousands of people that they serve in the European Union, and they have at least 300 cities in the U.S., so they're not new, right? So this has been around a while, and we feel pretty confident about it. And their business has been growing fairly rapidly, which I think is a good indicator of the type of business that they do. The second part, I think we go to bid bonds and stuff, right? Okay, I'm over to you because that's not my area.
Yeah, so there's a couple things. Right now, we have a bond that's in place to guarantee these prices. When we move into the agreement, we'll be going into payment and performance bonds. So again, not only that, but we've outlined a kind of a freeze on pricing for a period of time. So again, those are some things that we have in place that what we're seeing here should give some, I don't want to say guarantee, but some comfort that what we have in front of us is pretty solid.
But also, we're just not gonna go into bid. We still have some contract negotiations that the city administrator will go through process and hope and get your answers, get your questions answered in that process and looked in, correct?
That's correct, yes.
So it's not, this may not be final, but, I think there's good start and good questions that you're asking that I have in mind in the contract negotiations.
I just remember being up here when we talked about the IPROLs. I don't want to be going through that again. So make sure you're asking the questions now instead of later. But bottom line is, for the subcommittee, you guys are confident in the information that's presented. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, any more discussions from over here on the left? Okay. Good, go ahead, Mr.
Sorry, I just have one last question. I think I know the answer to this. If the customer decides they don't want to, or it's too complicated for them to work the app, it doesn't matter. You're going to know, the system's smart enough to let you know when there's a leak, and you're going to be on it like probably in the first day, I assume, right? So there's that added protection. If they don't use it at all, you will get the alarm, and then you'll take action on that. Am I right on that?
Yes, we have a water clerk that's going to be very well versed in. Yeah, yes, we are actually going to be looking at these and will be sent alerts. We can set our own parameters of what happens in the system, system-wide. So if we see anything out of whack, we'll be notified immediately, and then we can dispatch what's necessary. Correct.
Our customers will not be required to use the customer portal. It's just a benefit that they have, so.
How about after hours, weekends, how would you notify?
We will be getting emails if it's after hours, I believe. And my phone's always on, so.
There are people who don't believe in email.
I will be getting an email. So if we have a burst pipe, I will get the email saying we have a burst pipe at this, whatever. I go online, find it, send it, and then dispatch.
Dr. Carmichael, was your question about individual customers, how they would get notified through the customer portal?
Yes.
Yes, they can select email or text messages. Those are the two ways that are available for communication. I think, we talk a lot about leaks and leak detection. The water department is going to be all over that. I think the real value in the customer portal is that it puts the power into that customer's hands to monitor their usage, set any kind of alerts that they want. So if they want to know when they're going, from 5,000 to 10,000 to 50, that they want to alert every 5,000 gallons that they use, they can set that up for themselves. They can log on there, they can see daily, I forget if this system allows hourly totals, but it may, I can't remember exactly. Do you remember?
Yes,
It does? Okay.
it does.
So they can see their entire, they can see everything they have, everything that they're going, how much water they're using at any point in time. So really, I like it because for the customers that choose to use the customer portal, this will put all the data that they could possibly want about their water usage in their own hands that they can monitor and set their own alerts for. It's a very powerful tool. And then the rest of it, and Mr. Parsons and the water manager and the staff, they'll be monitoring for any of those catastrophic things or any of those bad things that'll happen.
Yeah, I'm just concerned with the people who don't check their emails daily and, ignore text or maybe don't even have text.
It's true. I mean, we're trying to do everything we can, though, to communicate.
Okay. There's nothing else. I guess I'd like to, looking for a motion to recommend to City Council to authorize the city administrator to go into contract negotiations with Libin Enterprises / Secure Vision Camstrack meters for an advanced metering infrastructure system and meter data management system.
Mr. Chairman, do we want part of that motion to be, are we recommending base plus any options, or are we just recommending to go into negotiations?
To go into, I'm assuming it's base plus the two options. Right now, I'll go back to Mr. Parsons. We're not, the option for y'all installing them is off the table, right? This is,
I mean, if we want to ask for volunteers. No, our staff is limited right now. It would be best if we had a company come and install it. We could have this system up and running pretty quickly.
so yes, base, option 1 and option 2.
I mean, I'll do it if I can as a member of the subcommittee. Can I make,
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Can I make a motion to, excuse me, to forward the recommendation to award base plus option 1 plus option 2 to Lubin Enterprises and the Camstrup team?
Say rewarding and say not award, but to go into contract negotiations.
Yes.
Yeah, 'cause it's not-
So motion to forward the recommendation to go into contract negotiations for base plus option 1 plus option 2 to Lubin / Camstrup.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, none opposed, so,
Chairman Valdez, do we want to put a dollar amount to that motion?
I don't,
That would be best.
okay,
So $642,591. Correct?
That's correct, yes.
Right. And I
not to,
think it's got 10 cents.
That's correct. So it'd be $642,591.10.
do we need to do
I
anything?
reckon we've already done the one, so I will just make a motion that we amend our recommendation to include the dollar amount of $642,591.10.
Do we need to do that, or?
Party can make the motion to amend, correct? Okay, sorry.
Okay, so it doesn't really matter, okay, so, yeah, okay.
That's what I thought I said.
Yeah,
If not, I'll let, you can tell me the words and I'll whisper.
to add, okay, go ahead.
Instead of amend
So
that.
the motion is to amend
Add.
our recommendation to the city council to add the dollar amount, $642,591.10, to our recommendation for Lubin Enterprises and Camstra negotiations.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to amend the original motion to add a dollar amount.
Amend the recommendation. I
Amend
think
the
the motion's
recommendation,
already been
yes.
made.
Yeah, the dollar amount, I'm not going to repeat it, if I get it wrong. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you all. Long discussion. But- Okay. Moving on to, let's see, item 4 now, right? FM 2252 wastewater project. City Council approved at the August meeting the advertisement of bid solicitation for 1, force main sanitary sewer project, 2, supply of goods and special services for grinder pumping equipment and installation, on-call emergency service repair, and the third one, the special services for bulk wastewater pumping, hauling, disposal. Bids were open also last Friday, and then the bids will be evaluated later this week by city engineers and city staff, and will present to City Council next week. Mr. Parsons, anything to add to that? Okay. So, I think that's all we have as an update for the water project at this point. Any questions? My left? No, right? Okay. Thank you. Okay, moving on to C, recommendations. And we're going, first one is water leak adjustments. And just like to remind everybody, by law, the Water Commission does not have the authority to grant any financial credits. The Water Commission can only recommend to either the city administrator to take action for credits up to $500, or to City Council to take action for credits above $500. So we'll start off with our first one. We only have one this time. Request for leak adjustment for 8818 Cherokee Path for the billing period of March 23rd, 2020 to April 23rd, 2020. Review and make recommendation regarding this request. Mr. Parsons, would you like to tell us about this leak request?
Yes, sir. At 8818 Cherokee Path, we found a 75,000-gallon leak due to an automatic pool filling failure, and they had a cross connection to the pool. The cross valve had been replaced and the cross connection has been removed. The reason the owner could not see the water leak was because the pool also had a drain, so as it would fill, it would also drain out of the backside of the pool through a tube into the backyard. And so the yard on the backside also gradually went down. It was hard to see from the back porch. All the receipts have been turned in, and the water loss would be credited at $604.35. Now, do we have the pictures, Kat? In that? So the cross connect was right here. It came out of the hose bib, went down, and it connected. Can you go to the next picture? There was only one, okay. So the pictures, so the pool itself inside the strainer, it had a device in it which would allow the pool to fill. It malfunctioned. It had hundreds of gallons going in an hour, but it was also draining out of the back side of the pool through a tube out of the back. And so that was why the customer couldn't see it.
This cross connection was actually an extra item you found.
Correct, yes.
That you-
Yes,
that
sir.
was correct. Okay. Petitioner is not present, so we'll start off on my right. Any questions for Mr. Parsons?
Just clarify on the pictures so the cross connection was removed. It didn't say anything about relocating. Do they no longer have the autofill system then, or?
Correct. He's going to fill with the hose instead.
Okay, and I don't know how to word the question. I'll hold that question.
Is there, okay.
Mr. Alderman?
No, I had looked at this and it looked straightforward to me, and it just brought up a question in my mind. This seems like an equipment malfunction, just like a leaky pipe, so I think it would fall in the same category. We had discussed at one point, and I'm maybe getting off subject here, so if it's somebody that programs their sprinklers wrong and they run all night and they use a lot of water, are we distinguishing between those two categories? Not that I feel this is at all, this is an equipment malfunction as opposed to somebody improperly programming their sprinkler system. Do we have a definitive answer on that? When I first looked at this, I thought it was maybe a issue that wasn't a piece of equipment that failed, but it just popped in my head. But I feel comfortable moving on with this.
This is something that we had talked about earlier this year when we got into the new projects, about what should we consider for leak adjustments. And I think we turned it over to those looking at ordinance 54 to revisit that and maybe take those into consideration. So if you have any input to that, when we talk about ordinance 54, maybe you'd be willing to add comments at that point later on today. I will add that, so one option was to put in a backflow prevention, correct? And keep the automatic meter, automatic
Correct.
flow, automatic filling. So-
And if he had the right correct device in there for whatever the citizens have right there, if they have the correct device, then it would meet the requirements. The other option is to remove it or to have an air gap, so.
Okay, okay. Going over to my left now. Dr. Carmichael.
I don't know, I just find it a little surprising that they had a cross connection at this day and age. I mean, this long into it. I just, do you think we have others?
No comment.
That's just,
It's something we're working towards fixing. Once we get fully staffed, once we get up to par, that is something we'll be looking into. Right now, we have 2 individuals that have CSI licenses. Once we get another, it'll be a little easier, and then once we're fully staffed. So a CSI is a customer service inspector's license, which means we can go and inspect for these cross connections and lead and types of things.
I know we were pretty aggressive on and it's the TCQ requirement on the sprinkler systems, but I think we should be just as vigorous here. And I kind of agree with Joe. We do need a little clarification of the leak adjustment. I'm not totally sure this one is as straightforward, but when you have an automatic system like that, it's constantly overflowing. I don't know, but I think it is what it is right now.
Commissioner Bullock, questions?
So I think we talked about this previously, especially on our form. Maybe I forgot, I was out last month, I apologize, but we asked specifically, what is the customer, what are you requesting of the water department? We're requesting a leak adjustment. I checked the toilets and found no leaks. Are we asking them specifically, what do you want, right? You're asking for a leak adjustment, and you tell me, and I just wanted to adjust it to 0, or I wanted to adjust it to, the average of my last. When a person asks, do we want to get to where, hey, look, what do you want us to do? Because that's up for interpretation, right?
So the guidelines that I'm governed by doesn't really take in consideration what they want. I can only give what I can show and prove.
Right.
Where it would come into debate is when it comes to you. If you wanted to grant what they want, that would be up to your interpretation. As far as the guidelines that I'm governed by is it has to be factual, has to be and presentable. And so honestly, I don't take a lot of consideration of what they want because I just show what the leak is, how much it is, and I just put it into the equation. I'm the computer, you're the brains.
Right, and I guess whether it comes to us or not, right? Because there is a threshold that you're approved for, there's a threshold that we're approved for, there's a threshold that Ms. Kane is approved for. You understand what I'm saying? So
Yes, sir.
making sure that our customer understands, this is what I can do. That what you can do might be enough. You know what I mean? They just want to be heard.
Yeah, I do explain that to them. When we get a water leak adjustment, I treat them all the same. I look at all the documentation. I go through all the water leak adjustment. The problem is the customers don't even know what to ask for a lot of times. They're like, I had a water leak. What can you do? What are my options? I mean, they're not going through the ordinances to read them, and so they call us or email us and ask us. But when we initially get, this is what we're getting, initially, they just don't know what to ask a lot of times.
And so that puts the determination on us in this body to determine, okay, what can we give them? You know, man, I want to know what you want. You know, some people have been specific. You know, hey, I want my bill adjusted for this. I mean, we've seen some in the past, but to read this, you know, hey, and I checked my toilets, I found no leaks. Okay, well, I can take, $10 off, right? Whatever. Do you understand where I'm coming from? I think they need to know, because some of these things that we can cut off before we get here, and all of a sudden we're moved to try to give them the lowest that we can give them or determine what we can do, right? That's just my comment. Just thinking, hey, we want them to be specific. What do you want? This is what I can do. This is what the Water Commission can do. This is the process that it's going to go through. You know what I mean? And maybe we need to spell that out on the water leak adjustment. Is there another piece of information that goes with this form? Can't remember. To tell them how to fill this out? Something?
No, sir, this is the water leak adjustment they fill out. This is the initial.
Yeah.
piece
Just
that they-
what's in the ordinance right now.
Right. And we're working, we're
Yeah,
working.
so.
Okay, thank you, sir. Oh, the timeline was a little hokey to me, though. I couldn't piece that together. I mean, this happened way back in March or?
So if you may, if you don't mind, so what happened is they were here last commission meeting, and he actually came and talked to me like, hey, he didn't make it into the meeting. We weren't able to get his case into the meeting before the cutoff time. So that's why he had to wait till this one,
Yes, sir.
to this meeting, so.
Copy. But he made it within the time frame to ask.
Correct, yeah, he met all the requirements, or else I would have just, like I said, I have my parameters. If he didn't meet those parameters, he wouldn't be here.
Yes, sir. Thanks.
Can I jump right in, because who found the cross connection and who found the leak? It doesn't say who found it, along with not having much of anything else.
So I did some more investigating. So when we get some of these, we have emails that we go back and forth. And once I found out it was an automatic pull fill, I went to his house to look at the automatic pull fill. And once I saw that it was under the ground, it was a cross connect, I informed him of the cross connect and that it would need to be repaired. So that's when that happened.
That delayed the process, right? You have to wait for that
Yes,
to be done.
So all these are different, and some take longer than others, especially when you have situations like this that come up. And so some of them are easy because they're real cut and dry. They send everything in, receipts, everything. Other times you have to wait for them to get Oz on vacation. So that's what takes the length of time to get them in sometimes.
Is there any kind of a state ordinance about cross connections? I know if you have one on your well, which I did years ago.
Yes, sir, there is.
They get pretty nasty.
Correct. We are responsible for the water from what we produce all the way to the last spigot in the house. And we just have to, and we are regulated by TCEQ, which has a cross-connection program in place, which we're following. It's in our ordinance.
So there was no, citation issued to this person or anything for?
The water department does not issue citations. We are not in enforcement. And a lot of times when our customers have these issues, they don't know or they haven't been informed. So we're working on that as well. We're gonna look at potentially in the future doing some education, and we're gonna be doing some inspections, which is to get everyone up into compliance. And then once we get everyone in compliance, then we can look further into that.
Okay, I'm just a little surprised that this day and age you even found a cross connection, so anyhow, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I want to add, really have any questions, but I want to add, I think some discussions you and I had, is that the way I understand this, when the meters were read on April 24th, is when the city was triggered that there was an excessive amount of leaks. So city contacted this homeowner and said, you have a leak. And all he did originally was check his toilets. Okay? Then he went back and said, you still have a leak. And we started looking around. That's when they called a plumber out, and they found the overflow malfunction. So I explained some of what he has in a statement on here about the toilet check. You know, there was no way you could get 90,000 gallons, 90,000 gallons leakage on toilets. So anyway, and I also questioned the fact that you know, the laptop readings, you know, it showed constant flow, less than 70 gallons per hour from March 23rd to April 3rd, and then it jumped up to 200 April 3rd, and then the leak stopped on April 16th, which was a week before the leak was found, and it started back up later. So I think that's where some of the malfunction was. It leaked for a while, it was working for a while, and it worked, and whatever. So I think that's all we can explain at this point. So you know, at this point we have the information. You know, we have the recommendation from the manager, but still, you have the discretion to say what you want to recommend. Again, we don't make the decision. We don't have the final decision. We make recommendations. So I'll leave it up to y'all.
Mr. Parsons, you saw the water in his backyard, though. I mean, it was obvious that that's where it was going. Am I right on that, or you're just going by what he said?
Yeah, when I got there, he had already shut off the water to the backyard or to the pool and had it repaired, or was having it repaired. And so I did not see the water. He told me that the water, but I followed from where it came from the cross connect into the, from the spigot all the way to the filling, and then also the drainage. And I mean, he wasn't lying. It is a lot of water. It was a big tube. It was going in and coming out. I mean, that's the fact of how his pool set up. Did I see the water in the backyard? I did not. A lot of times we don't see a lot of that water unless we are the ones to find it.
Thank you.
Do you see a lot of green grass?
Green weeds.
Green weeds, greens?
Okay, so based on the 75,000 gallon leak, his bill was 90,000. So you see his calculation up here on the screen. Basically, this is the maximum adjustment he can get, because anything below 15,000 gallons is the base rate, basically. So again, I'll leave it up. It's your call. What do you want to? Anybody have a suggestion? Recommendation?
We did have one, I think it was a couple months ago, where there was a pool system that had a solar water heater. So
Right.
water was running through there, and that had a leak in that system. So I know this one's ambiguous, but I do see that the failure of a equipment component is still allowable under the ordinance.
The current ordinance.
The one that, and I'll go ahead and mention, I didn't want to ask the question earlier because I wanted to hear the discussion, but the cross-connection issue, in the ordinance, there's some implication that, you have to be doing things properly in order to be qualified for the adjustment, but the leaking component is not part of that cross-connection. So I think we're on okay. Well, it doesn't go through that out. That's to prevent it from going back into the hose bib. But just to address your point, when we did ours, like I guess it's 4 years ago now, they tried to put one in at my house without putting a cross connection in there. So I think the pool companies, it's pretty common. Because that thing goes under concrete and it's not where you can see it. And if they can get away with it, they're going to save themselves a couple $100 right there.
That's
So
backflow preventer.
I know, but it's not where it's not as visible as the one out front. So your average homeowner thinks I've got a backflow preventer, and they don't realize they need another one back there. But we had to make them
Or you have it on
And
your
then it was a
hose.
fight between our primary contractor and the pool guy on whether or not, who was responsible to put it in. So, when you get your CSI guys, I think that's gonna be a target of opportunity to find some problems. So I think it's probably more common than we think. But anyway, I am concerned that they had a illegal connection and that it was associated with the system, but I think where it was at in the system, given that you found it and they fixed it, I think I can live with it, but I do hope that we address it in the ordinance moving forward. So anyway, my comments and thoughts. And so the 604 is 35 is what we'd be asking for as a credit, is that correct?
Correct.
And then the last thing, and I'll shut up because it's getting late. I do think when we have them fill out the form, we can point them toward the ordinance, whether they use it or not is up to them. But I do think before it comes to us, they should at least know those thresholds, as Commissioner Bullard was saying, that, we have our $250 if I have good data, and we have our $500. Because I guess what we're trying to get out of the customer is, if we can't support it, is it worth your time? In other words, do you want us to? We shouldn't be in a position of trying to figure out what they want. I mean, that was the whole reason we put in the ordinance in the first place. So they could say, hey, I'll be willing to take, in this case, I'll be willing to take the $500 just so I don't have to go through 2 months of, trying to get it through the council as opposed to 1 month. So I do think you'd be okay to let them know that. What they put on the form is up to them, but
I think
I'm
we had
okay with
discussed
that
that.
number
I think
on
that
there.
was brought up at previous discussions months ago, so.
So I guess we're ready for motion?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, so, let me get the address. Lost the address. 18, my computer's not working. Cherokee, okay. So I make a motion that we recommend to city council approval of the leak adjustment of $604.35 to the customer at 8818 Cherokee.
Okay, I have a motion to recommend to city council the recommended amount of $604.35 from the city manager, from the water manager. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. So 4-1. You say sustain or decline, or no? Is that? Can you? What's the option?
Do you have a conflict of interest, and is that why you're abstaining?
No, I have an issue with the cross connection.
So it should decline, should
So-
oppose, right?
Right, so it's just, you vote no.
Okay, I'll vote no.
Thank you.
Vote no. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Moving on. Number 2, discuss and make recommendation amending ordinance 54-122019 to include fire flow service for individuals outside of the city CCN. So in your packet is a memo from our Assistant City Secretary to only change the ordinance so mentioned at this time is in amending the definition of the service agreement, section 7.07 and section 27.05 to include the addition of fire flow service for individuals outside the city CCN. Last month, the Water Commission discussed this proposed changes. And since the many city staff has incorporated the changes you suggested in the agreement. And those changes are reflected in your packet. The deposit was lowered to $400 per commission suggestion. Mr. Parsons, anything you want to add to this?
No, sir. It's already been through legal, like I said, it's already been through legal, and they've looked at it, and they are in agreement with this change.
Any questions for Mr. Parsons? Turn on my left. Mr. Mueller.
No questions.
Mr. Bullard?
No questions from me, sir.
Dr. Carmichael? No question. Mr.
Is this the point where we were talking a little bit earlier about maybe adding in the distinction between,
No, this is strictly for the fire flow service.
I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
so it's in your packet, it was in the packet, what was, yeah, was shown here, yeah. Okay, no questions there either. Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to recommend to City Council to amend the definition for service agreements, section 7.07 and section 27.05 to include the addition of fire flow service for individuals outside the city CCN. Is that clear? So, you want a motion?
Is that is that your
No,
motion?
I'm saying what I'm looking for. I can't make the motion. I'm making it easier
I'll
for
be
you.
glad to motion what you just said.
Okay.
If somebody wrote it down.
Already wrote, they got it on record. Okay, so we got a motion from Dr. Carmichael for what I just read earlier. Do I have a second?
Second.
See, I'm trying to spell it out to make it easier on y'all. Okay, I have a motion and a second. And as I read the motion earlier, as a proposal I was looking for, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, so moving on to number 3, Water Commission activity and projects. First one on the list is discuss and make possible recommendations to ordinance review project. So there's a page that was on your, at your place when you came in. Starts with ordinance 61. I'll turn it over to Commissioner Bullard or Mueller, which one of you want that to lead? Or-
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you, Mr. Mueller, for all your help, sir. And Mr. Parsons and Ms. Balby, you guys are awesome. So we've come to this point. We were able to make some leeway on ordinances 159 and ordinance 61. We evaluated these ordinances. We'll go through 61 first, which is our drought management plan. We went line upon line. We evaluated these for simplicity, ambiguity, current relevance, and whether we can just understand them. We also, what we did is we met on a weekly basis, came up with some recommendations, swapped them, sent them to Mr. Parsons. He evaluated them. He met with us, and here we are tonight. The first one we'll go over is 61, which is our drought management plan. Just want to go through them real quickly here, just so you all can see what we're talking about. You'll see the impact that we have. Page 1, the second whereas there, just right down here, it says the 2010 estimated population of the City of Garden Ridge is approximately 3259. We recommend that, we put our updated population estimate. We said, we could tell that it was written between 2010 and 2015, right? So we recommend that we just change that, just so it could bring the ordinance up to date. Does that make sense? Because it's saying the 2015 estimate will be, right? So this is 2020, so that's what we recommend, all right? Page 2, all right? We go down to our definitions. And the definition for handheld. Okay, this was a little confusing. It says handheld hose, the hose attended by one person fitted with a manual or automatic shutoff nozzle. We recommend that we change the attended by to physically held by one person. This will clarify the definition, because I can sit out there and I can put a sprinkler in my yard and I'm attending it, but I'm not holding it. And I think that's what handheld means, right? I've attended my hose in my yard before. So just to clarify for ambiguity, right?
I don't want to, I see a lot of people out there with watering their grass in the morning with a hose that has no shut-off, manual or otherwise.
Well, the shut-off is still at the faucet, right? I mean, in a way, we interpret it that way. Yeah. I guess,
Any more input on that one? Let's go on to page 5, table 1. All right, so the restrictions, according to the Edwards Aquifer, especially for stage 5, we recommend that we go ahead and insert the number 625 feet in there. That is per Edwards Aquifer. It's right there on their website, so we can insert that. 660 for stage 1 and 625 on down for stage 5. So page 5, down at the trigger point, all right? It says here, trigger point C. When the pumping ability of the Trinity Aquifer well drops to 600 gallons per minute or draw down level of the well reaches 75 feet above the transponder. Upon initial discussion, Mr. Muse and myself had questions. And when we took it to Mr. Parsons, he began running tests. Did you want to expound upon what you're doing, sir, for that test, for the trigger point?
Sure, what we're looking at is we're running both Trinity wells. When this was written, there was only one Trinity well. So we're running both Trinity wells at the hottest part of the year, and we're trying to find out what a good number or what a good trigger would be. So we want to come back and be able to put that in there when we have a good data for you.
So the basis of it, it's a work in progress for that one. Okay, so we'll get back to that trigger point, and we'll have a recommendation at that point once Mr. Parsons finishes his test. If we'll go down to page 7, just right at 4.06 there, at our headline, end of emergency use restrictions, recommend going ahead and correcting that to emergency, all right? Hey, simplicity, relevance and understanding, right? Because somebody will say something about it, right? Like me, like us. So paragraph 7, A1 here. We recommend that we add the mayor before the city of Garden Ridge for the authority or his designated appointee, because we also have it here. You can see the disparity in the two, right? So for the Trinity Aquifer, we said the program and or each stage may be terminated or changed at the discretion of the city of Garden Ridge. Okay, but for the same statement, if you go down to Edwards Aquifer, we say the program and or each stage may be terminated or changed upon declaration of the Edwards Aquifer Authority and or discretion of the mayor, city of Garden Ridge. So we recommend that we put the mayor in there and or his designated appointee, because it could be ambiguous at some point, right? You know, the city manager, city administrator, and or the water manager. You know, that's up for discussion. And or we just input mayor. You know, do you all have a recommendation? Should we just mayor? Leave it at mayor? Because he can designate who he likes at some point.
Mayor Thompson, you want to add anything to that? You're good? Okay.
Good with that?
I think
All
the
right.
2 paragraphs should be the same, so if you're
Sure.
gonna put a designated alternate, you need to do them both, so I'd prefer to just leave it mayor, but that's up to the mayor.
Okay. If we can go to section 5 here on the same page. We recommend here under the penalties, okay, if you'll see right here at A person who knowingly or intentionally violates the provisions of this ordinance shall be deemed guilty of misdemeanor offense, and upon conviction of the punishment, fine, blah, blah, blah. So baseline here, it's $10 in Ordinance 54, Section 5.05. That is the baseline for the fine. But we find here that it's $25. We recommend that we change that to $10, okay, for the entry, or excuse me, the baseline or the bottom range of the fine. We recommend $10 versus the $25. Is there any objection to that? You have any say, Ms. Kane? I know you.
The only thing that I would recommend is we run this section through, of course, any of the ordinance rewrite through our city attorney.
Sure.
Ordinance 54 was written much further back than ordinance 61, and perhaps there is a reason why the penalty in ordinance 61 is higher. Perhaps the limits within the law have changed.
Okay. So we've had revisions to both of those, right? So.
But I know that ordinance 54 has not had a revision to the penalty section.
Yeah.
I can, that one I know it has not had.
So we may want, as long as both of them are the same, we may want to change. the
Yeah,
other
we
one.
can make them the same.
All right, so we want to compare the
But
two.
we'll,
Yeah.
I would recommend seeing the recommendation of the city attorney on the
Okay.
penalty section.
Okay,
Sounds good.
all right. Page 8, section 7. We recommend changing, a person may file a written request for a variance from these rules, from these rules with the, we say City of Garden Ridge, but once again, that's huge, right? So as Commissioner Mueller put it, you know, the commission is the gateway for any changes, right? We're going to recommend it to the city council or to the City of Garden Ridge for any change. So we recommend changing the City of Garden Ridge to the City of City Water Commission. Any objection?
Is leaving it the city of Garden Ridge automatically do it that way? I mean, when a variance is submitted, you process it through the water commission first, and the city council, correct? What's the proper wording here, I guess, just from your point of view?
So there, and if I could just jump in there, I know you addressed it to Ms. Kane, but there is an ordinance, right? There is ordinance 54. Once again, we kind of compared the two. Now there was, Commissioner Mueller found it, I think it was section 32. We talked about variances to subdivisions. Okay, so it's got the water commission referenced in there. So again, in keeping with, right, keeping it simple. Yes, ma'am.
Remember that the Water Commission is a recommending body and the City Council is a legislative body.
Right.
So if the Water Commission were to hear a variance, then they would have to make recommendation to the City Council.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And that's all we're proposing. We understand that we have no final say on any of this stuff. So, I mean, we can go back if we want to look at, because we're reviewing 54 as well. Do we need to change 54 to read the City of Garden Ridge? I mean, we're just looking at making the two match.
I understand. Perhaps also some direction that the commission's recommendation goes to City Council for final approval, for clarification,
Okay.
and that be
Do we need that
consistent
in
in
the ordinance?
both.
We know we don't have any authority to change ordinances.
Right.
But this is also going to be the guide to the staff, to the public. This is the, whatever, your ordinances are your laws, so I think it's showing that trail of the next step needs to also be included.
Okay, is that what they do in ordinance 19 for the
I don't
building code?
recall off the top of my head.
Okay. I just want all of them to look the same, that's all.
Okay.
So we can add that, and maybe both of them can say the same thing, if I'm hearing you correctly. Both of them say, hey, look, it'll go, you know, to the City Water Commission for a recommendation to the City Council for final approval. Is that what you'd like to see?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you for that guidance, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Okay, so the next line here. All stages, opening paragraphs after the EEA, we want to remove and or. So if you'll go down to our stages, if you will, down in the appendix right here. So if you'll read, let's look at the first paragraph here, which says stage 1 alert. So stage 1 alert begins when the Edwards Aquifer Authority test well J17 leaves level that reaches 660 feet, mean sea level at the monitored well, and is declared by the Edwards Aquifer Authority and or at the discretion of the mayor, City of Garden Ridge. The recommendation was to provide the mayor with the discretion, full discretion, versus the Edward Aquifer to remove and or. Does that make sense?
Mr. Mayor?
I see your point. I think it can really go either way, but sure. Leaving it off or putting and/or, in essence, means the same thing. So, less words, I guess.
Okay. Did you have anything you want to add, Mr. Parsons?
Yeah, I think what we were trying to say is we would take out the Edwards Aquifer Authority as declaring anything and leave the declaring up to the mayor of Garden Ridge, not the Edwards Aquifer. Because if that were to be the case, we would be in stage 1 right now, because it's and or. And we're not following that.
So we want to take the Edwards Aquifer off, leave it up to the mayor.
If I'm reading it correctly.
I think what you're saying is the first part of it is just who's going to say that it's time to think about it, which is Edwards Aquifer Authority. In other words, stage 1 alert, period. Edwards Aquifer Authority will declare stage 1 when the test well reaches the moving 10-day average 660 feet. But the implementing of that for Garden Ridge is at the discretion of the mayor. So
Discretion of the mayor, exactly.
So the first part of that is just nothing happens until they say they are at stage 1, but then we decide whether or not we will, for our drought management plan, follow that or not.
So take the R off. Basically, it requires both.
Mr. Chair. I said that they mean the same thing, but now really thinking about it, I think it's better to leave the and/or there. And the reason why, if something was happening in the city, and let's say the Edwards was at 661, but the water manager and I talk every day about this, or nearly every day. And he says, hey, we got a real issue with a couple of the wells and some storage or whatever. And I go, let's go to stage 1 now. Let's tell everybody we need to reduce the demand right now, regardless of what's going on with the Edwards Aquifer. So I guess the way to look at it would be giving the mayor the discretion that even calling it earlier if need be, based on the situation of the city.
Someone else have some?
That makes sense, because I think that was discussed.
Yeah. I don't agree on the other side of it, because that means Edwards.
What was the point?
Declare without you.
To leave it as is, just remove that recommendation.
The way that this reads, though, is that stage 1 begins when the well level reaches 660 feet and is declared by EAA and/or at the discretion of the mayor. So the way I read this is we would have to wait until 660 feet.
But what I understand is if there's a situation with our water tanks or wells or something, that the city could actually declare it in December, when
If we
don't
change
have
the wording on this.
Yeah. Ms. King?
Back into the ordinance, there's a section in there about triggering. Is this language consistent with any of that prior language?
Yes. So the trigger is 660 feet. If that's what you're asking, as far as the well, if we go back up to the table there. Okay, so this is the Edwards Aquifer
Right.
plan.
That when you go, the declaration of emergency stages, is any of that language consistent? Declaration of the trigger points?
Go back to page 4.
So A, right here, it says
Yes.
declaration of stages 1 through 5 by the Edwards Aquifer Authority and/or at the discretion of the mayor, City of Garden Ridge. So
we're mixing things here. This is emergency stages, and we're talking about demand reduction in the stage 1 through 5.
Demand reduction.
Go down a little bit. So- Last two, right there. No, go back up. A little bit more. No, the other way. Yeah. Right there.
I guess it doesn't matter. You get
Right
to the
there,
same
D.
point either way. It's the same
D, when the
appendix
city
either way.
Capacity.
By
A, B, C, D.
infrastructure damage.
So D, it says the city public capacity is another, is a trigger point.
Yes.
That's what the mayor was just saying.
And he has the,
He could,
yeah.
yeah, without the Edwards being at any point, doesn't matter.
I guess we can leave it at this point for the mayor.
And
We'll leave it and we'll press forward and,
Yep, I think so.
okay. Thank you for your guidance, everyone. So page 10, paragraph 1. Did you have something else, Mr. Parson? You did?
I'm sorry, I was still thinking about the last one. What'd you say?
No, I was just asking if you had anything on that other point that we were talking about. No, you good?
No, sir, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, so page 10, paragraph 1. We get into the stages once again. So we just kind of read through the language and making sure that it's consistent throughout, right? It says here, water waste is prohibited to include allowing water to run off onto a gutter, ditch, or drain, or failing to repair a controllable leak. So we're gonna do a little thumb exercise here. Whoever's got it, a little finger exercise. If you go down to stage 2, please. Para 1. Stage 2, it's just right up under there, para 1. Okay, here, it does say the same thing, right? So we're great. But then let's go to stage 3, and it's omitted there. All right, so we're recommending that we include that into stage 3 because it's essentially saying the same thing and it's restrictive in nature, but we would like to see that put here for 1. Also to include water running off into the street, all right? And Ms. Parsons might have something more on this. If you go down, just scroll down just a little bit here for para 5. Go down a little bit more. Okay, right here. Okay, so in paragraph 5, at the end, that last statement says water runoff into the streets is prohibited. Okay, and it also says that, number 7, water runoff into the streets is prohibited. Go ahead, Ms. Jefferson.
So in this, it's actually illegal for you to wash your car and have water that has soaps and stuff run off into any drainage. That is something that's that I just learned not too long ago. I didn't think that was, I didn't know that that was illegal, but the EPA regulates that, and they say you cannot have any washing of anything and then going down into a drain. So that's why we want to take that off.
So we want to take that out.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we want to take the water runoff into the street prohibited. We want to take that from anyone to be able to do that. So we want to put that into those other segments as well.
Okay, and so what we're suggesting, if y'all can just bear with me here, if you go back up to stage 1, para 1, okay, because I wanted to point out that running in the street, and you tell me, Mr. Parson, if this will work for what you're talking about, because you said it should be in every stage. Okay, so what we'd like to amend para 1 to say is, wastewater is prohibited to include allowing water to run off onto a gutter, ditch, drain, into the street, or failing to repair a controllable leak. Does that say the same thing that you would like it to say, and we can apply that to each stage? Or does it specifically have to be along with washing the car?
So with the EPA, they specifically, if it's just water, they don't have a problem with just water. They
Okay.
do have a problem with soap and stuff like that. So that's where I was coming from, that aspect. I don't want to see anyone using water that's running down the street. That's just a waste of water. So I don't want to see that. But that, as far as the law is concerned, I'm not recommending that we make that something that we're going to mandate. Sometimes accidents happen. So I don't know. That's up to your discretion.
Okay. So, and that's what we talked about. because we'd like to see the number 1, number 2, number 3 consistent, right? Because number 3, it needs to be contained in number 3 as well, stage 3. So if we could change that statement to read, running into the street. You know, I don't know if you guys have any conversation on it or any thoughts on it. Are you following what we're talking about there?
I am following what you're talking about, but to a certain extent, no matter how tight you make the wording, there's still vagueness because you've got to define waste and runoff. I think those things, for example, if it's a windy day and somebody's using sprinklers, there may be a little bit of overspray that is unavoidable. And I hate to get into the argument. I mean, the point is don't do it, right? Minimize it. But when we start using the word prohibited and with fines in there, I'm not saying don't do it. I can see differences of opinion in what that means. So gutter, ditch, and drain, well, the gutter's at the side of the street, the ditch is where you don't have a gutter, and a drain is in the street. I don't know how much more has to be added there, and to a certain extent, the more we add, the more we imply there is no vagueness in the term waste and runoff. I mean, water running off into the street is what I envision, but I've had people make comments about a little bit of overspray on a windy day. So should that be avoided? Yes, but at what point does it become, we're gonna take you out for a fine of $10?
At the same time, we have yards with drainage ditches going behind. And if you're watering the vegetation back there, then you're in violation of the ordinance, I guess.
Well, that's why, I mean, eventually it's going to run off somewhere. So I think what we're really talking about is excess. But I don't know how to word that. That's not so vague. So, I mean, I guess if we want to add in the street to all the stages, I don't really have a problem with it, because no matter what we do, there's still going to be, if somebody wants to contest it, there's, they go to the district court and they can find out if the judge thinks it's according to our ordinance. Like, I just can't imagine that being in a district court. But anyway, it's in all the other water ordinances I've seen, so I don't think it's a problem putting it there.
Yes, sir. Okay. That's a recommendation. We can go on to page 10, it's para 3. Okay, are we there? There we are. All right, so what we'd like to do is change sentence on areas without an address by removing Wednesday. Replace with as if address ends with 2 to match other stages. If you read the other stages, the days are a little off, right? And what we'd like to do is just change it by removing the Wednesday in paragraph 3 and saying replace with as if address ends in 2 to match the other stages, just to keep it simple. Page 10, paragraph 8. We'd like to delete this upon recommendation from Mr. Parsons. Unnecessary restriction is the comment. Is there anything else you'd like to say to that, sir? No, it's just unnecessary. Page 11, paragraph 9. Down. Okay, so maybe it's the first one up. Go back up, please. 9. We recommend that this one be included in the zoning ordinance. This has to do with building permits and so forth, so I recommend that our folks on the Planning and Zoning Committee look at that.
This does not pertain to planning and zoning. This is the filling of pools when we're under water restrictions. It really needs to stay as a restriction during these stages.
Okay.
I don't believe that this is, the zoning ordinance would be the appropriate place for this.
Okay, thank you, ma'am, for that guidance.
Ma'am,
You're
it
welcome.
references the building permit. No
What it's-
building permit will be issued.
What it's saying is that our building inspector, this was stage 1, I believe,
Yes, ma'am.
will not issue building permits during stage 1 unless the homeowner provides 100% of the water for filling of the pool, and the contractor or whoever's building the pool will have to bring proof that they are going to fill that pool with outside water, and then they're going to have to also bring a receipt showing that that pool was filled with outside water before final inspection is completed.
Yes, ma'am, I understand, but you want this here in ordinance 61 instead of ordinance 19,
Yes.
the building permit one?
Yes, because these are restrictions concerning these different stages of water restrictions. These are what we have to follow, what the citizens need to follow during these stages.
We understand. We just thought it would be better placed in the swimming pool section of ordinance 19, but we can leave it in there.
I think it would get lost and overlooked if it was placed over there. And we, for one thing, if we do go into restrictions.
We should keep in mind, though, that there's a significant gap in time between the issuance of the building permit and the stages. So my concern with this has always been, I can get the building permit when we're not, and then nobody catches it when it changes, or I can have a restriction applied because I get the building permit in the stages and then we're not when it comes time to fill it. I mean, shouldn't the issue be the filling of the pool and not the building permit?
Yes, that's addressed in stage 2 and stage 3, about filling the pool.
All right. Moving on to page 12. Once again, it's that unnecessary restriction, paragraph 7. Page 12, paragraph 7. It's about the restaurants. Once again, we recommend removal of that one. Once again, that statement is on paragraph 13. Excuse me, page 13, paragraph 6. The restriction once again. Paragraph 6, restaurant once again. So those are the recommendations that we have for ordinance 61. We understand that we have a couple here that folks recommend that we reword. We'll reword that one, a couple of these, and maybe forward for your review. Can we do that?
Sure.
Forward to you for your review.
Sure.
I don't know, do we have to come before this body again, sir, to discuss those, or what's the next stage here?
I think we need to, at some point, bring the edited version back to this commission that we can then recommend to city council then?
Yes, very
not
definitely. You're
ready
going to
at this
need the
point, so-
edited version.
So we
Okay.
have to have,
All right, so we'll do some updates. Just a brief update on 159. Excuse me, there's a couple more here. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
yes, sir.
There's been a statement 3 times now that the restaurant water restriction is unnecessary. And since this is a business meeting, I'd like to ask the commission in a business meeting, why are you declaring that unnecessary?
Mr. Parsons?
So it was asked what we could look at for whatever needed to be addressed and adjusted. And my recommendation was to take that off for a few of the stages. It's restaurant water, and it's a very low impact when it comes to the water use. And I didn't want to restrict business, and that was the reason for that.
Okay, just throw out a couple of things. You don't always have restrictions because of just the impact. You also do it because of the signal. And, we're hoping that we're going to end up with more restaurants than one. And when people go to restaurants and they're reminded that we're in a stage, frankly, 3, 4, and 5 are pretty extreme stages. I mean, when's the last time we were even in 1? So if we go to 3, 4, or 5, it's not a bad thing that when I go to a restaurant, I'm reminded as a citizen that my city is in 3, 4, or 5 because the waiter or waitress says, we're in stage 3, 4, or 5, and I can't give you water unless you actually say you want water. So admittedly, a glass of water in the restaurants in the city has a small impact, but it's not necessarily about the impact of the water. It's more about the signal and the consistency of a signal that we're sending. So I'd ask you to consider that in your recommendation.
Okay. Ms. King?
Also, when these restrictions and guidelines were formulated, they were taken off of the restriction guidelines that Edwards EAA uses. And we have found over the years that when our guideline, when we would be in restrictions following, being the same restrictions Edwards would be in, that residents would tend to get confused. Why does Edwards restrictions say this, but then Garden Ridge, why are you saying this? They would tend to get confused. Because remember, Edwards restrictions are often posted on the media. I just throw that out just as maybe something that you may want to think about. I do know that the serving of water in restaurants is something that Edwards, that's part of their restrictions.
Thank you. There's a couple more here. Page 14, please. I believe it's paragraph 4. Page 14, stage 4, if you paragraph 4. Recommend, says here, restrictions continue until there is an announcement that stage 4 has been canceled or that stage 5 is in effect. Excuse me, that was paragraph 3. Additional restrictions on water use may be established until the discretion of the city council. So we recommend that the mayor may establish interim restrictions until the city council is able to meet, because what if the city council can't meet? So it'll be in your hands, Mayor, to be able to make the decision in the case that the city council can't be gathered for a vote. Okay. And last one here for 61, page 14, stage 5, and we recommend adding the sentence, excuse me, I gotta find where we are here. Yeah, stage 5, just right at the up at the top here, stage 5. We need to add in there 625 feet. If you read it right from the Edwards Aquifer, the website, stage 5 begins when the Edwards Aquifer Authority index well J17 level 17 reaches 625 feet mean sea level. So on the other stages, stage 4, 3, 2, and 1, we have that in the beginning paragraph, the opening paragraph. We just recommend that that statement be added to stage 5. And that will be on our corrected recommendations that we send to you all. Ordinance 159, which is our landscape and irrigation system. We found that a lot of that information belongs to the Planning and Zoning Committee. A lot of that, we split some of those things, stages 1 through 4, excuse me, 2 through 4, upon conversation with Mr. Parsons, myself, and Commissioner Mueller. We recommend that sections 2 through 4 be incorporated into Ordinance 19.
Okay, I have a question here. You have sections 2 through 4, but then you have sections 4 through 6 on the next pair. So is 1, 3, one of those three?
Yes,
So
it's 2 and
4,
3.
yeah.
2 to 3.
2 to 3.
Excuse
okay.
me, yeah, 2 to 3, sorry, Zeroscape Systems, excuse me, sir. 4 is, 4 through 6 are irrigation, gray water recycling, and rainwater harvesting. Because Commissioner Mueller and myself are reviewing Ordinance 54, we recommend that that be incorporated into Ordinance 54, and we will discuss that in future commission meetings, where that should be incorporated. 7 through 9 also is applicable to Section 54. And I would open up if Commissioner Mueller or Mr. Parsons have anything that you want to add to Section 159, or excuse me, Ordinance 159, if you guys have any.
We do have some notes talking about permits for irrigation system that we got from the water manager about, we will add verbiage in here about permits for irrigation system, cost of inspection of those systems, and re-inspections. We're going to add that, we will add that in there when it is incorporated in Section 54, so you'll see that. That's something we're going to talk about and develop a plan for.
And I have nothing to add.
Okay, comments on your recommendations for Ordinance 159? I think sections 2 and 3 are already in the new zoning ordinance. The grass tolerant long grass is already there, and also Zeroscape. So they're already there. Sections 4 through 6, which is the gray water and the rainwater harvesting, that in the new zoning ordinance, well, I guess we'll have to recommend to the zoning to remove those sections. Is that correct, Ms. Kane?
I'm sorry, I did not hear what you said.
You know, their comments on the 159, for sections 4 through 6 or 4 through 9 to be transferred to ordinance 54. Some of those sections are in the new zoning ordinance, the rainwater harvesting and gray water. So I guess we need to recommend to P&Z to remove those sections from the new zoning ordinance.
We didn't know those were in the new ordinance.
Yes, and we talked about, it's got to be, should be only one of the other places, so we can pursue that, you know,
Well,
at the next P&Z meeting.
If P&Z is going to cover those others, I don't know why we wouldn't just cover Section 4 if they're going to be covered in Ordinance 19.
Why do we need to redo it?
Well, go ahead.
It's best that we don't have the same requirements on different ordinances. They're best that they're always in just one location.
Right.
We can ask planning and zoning to remove those from the planning and zoning ordinance, and that can go into the water ordinance 54. And those were just strictly on gray water and rainwater harvesting, correct?
So Section 4 of 159 is irrigation systems.
Irrigation system.
I get-
Said we want to regain that control.
Let me see if I can ask this question correctly. Gray water and the rain harvesting. Is there anything that the water department needs to monitor with those types of systems?
As long as they have an RP at the front, we don't.
So that, since there is something that would need to be monitored in it, I think it would best be found in ordinance 54. I'm afraid that in the zoning ordinance, it could be something in time that manages to be overlooked, or the full aspect of what is needed to be done with those types of systems may not be understood.
Yeah, the problem with the gray water and/or the rainwater harvest is that it could have a potential cross connect. And that's something that we need to make sure we don't have. However, if there's an RP, and that is the TCEQ's recommendation, air gap, RP, that right there, you can separate and segregate, and you can make sure that we are not going to get anything back into our system at the highest degree.
Okay, just for information, these sections 4 and 6 right here, the exact same wording is currently in the new zoning ordinance. So we just need to decide where, do the Water Commission want to retain that control, or do we want to pass it on to zoning? That's what I guess.
I think the Water Commission needs to retain that, or the Water Department needs to retain that control on those types of systems.
Same thing with the irrigation system, so we want to keep section 4 as well in 54 then.
That would be my recommendation. And I think it will be,
We can take that P and Z next week. next
Yes.
time. Okay.
Awesome. So I just want to make clear that we recommend doing away with 159
Yeah.
totally, and separating, the responsibilities of the ordinance, so.
So once we get once we get everything 159, either in 54 or the new zoning ordinance is published, then we can come back later. But for now, we'll leave it like it is until all that's taken care of. And then we'll actually have a motion in here. We'll have it back on the agenda to repeal 159, but it's got to be in place first.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So
back
to be clear, the subcommittee was asking for the Water Commission's okay with that, right?
Yeah, so I guess, that's what I'm going to get to next. I was going to ask Ms. Kane, do we need a consensus or a motion or anything to any of these, to 61 or 159, to move forward? So let's start with, we're here on 159 right now. So do I need a motion for this, the recommendation? Or do we need consensus?
I think a consensus would suffice to go to the planning and zoning and have those sections, so then y'all will be able to move forward with drafting of these, moving those items between those ordinances.
Okay, so we just need a consensus. Do I have consensus from all the commissioners to to follow through with your recommendation?
I think
I
so.
don't need a motion.
Can we just restate after all that discussion?
Sure.
Which ones go to 54? Are they, so, we were talking about 2 through 3, 4 through 6, 7 through 9. Have we
So-
now said all of it's coming to 54?
No, sir. 2 through 3, 2 and 3 would essentially go to ordinance 19, P and Z.
It's actually the new zoning ordinance. There's a new one coming out.
Okay.
Okay.
And 4 through 6, we're recommending, 4 through actually 9, coming through 54.
Okay, you have my consensus.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Haldeman? Everybody on this side, on the left?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we got consensus on that. So let's go back to ordinance 61. Do I need a motion or a consensus to proceed with the recommended changes and have a proposal next time or at a later date?
So,
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
What do we need at this point? What I'm saying.
I think a consensus to proceed with what is being proposed, so that document can come back to you for your review until you're ready to send it forward to city council with a recommendation.
Okay. So I need a consensus to proceed with the discussion we had today on ordinance 61, to get it to a form that we can get it revised and then brought back here for recommendation to city council. So do I have consensus?
I consent.
Okay, we're here.
Yes.
Okay. Is that everything on the ordinances?
Yes, sir. We are about a third of the way through 54 right now.
Okay.
We plan to we'll forward that to Mr. Parsons sometime in the near future, and we'll bring some discussion back to the commission, hopefully next month.
Well,
And Commissioner Halteman, part of that will be some clarity on the leak adjustment procedures that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And one other thing popped into my mind, if you don't mind me bringing it up for possible change. When we were talking about ordinance 61 and the surcharges in the stages, we don't really talk about that in the leak adjustment. I don't think, in 2 and 3, when the surcharges start getting 200, 300%, or whatever they get up to, is that something we need to deal with as well in leak adjustment for,
I'm confused.
well, I guess we have those 200% surcharges. I assume that means on the water used over like 45,000 gallons or whatever like that. So when we deal with leak adjustments, are these potential, I don't mean to use the word penalties, but the surcharges in these drought stages going to be subject to leak adjustment?
We'll take a look at that. We'll bring something back to you.
Thank you.
So we're talking about ordinance review process right now, so is there any other feedback you want to provide Commissioners Mueller or Bullard with thoughts on 54 as far as leak adjustments? Things like that they want to consider. We talked about it earlier this year, and we had some ideas that everybody put out. So it's a good time to.
Yeah, right now it says on the leak adjustment that the water that was confirmed in the leak will be charged at the lowest tier rate. The assumption when that was put in there was that lowest tier rate represented cost. As we found in the rate study last year, that is actually not true. So I'm wondering if perhaps it should say something like will be charged at cost as determined by rate study or some other mechanism, because the cost is actually closer to the second or third tier.
Okay, something with the water. We'll have to incorporate the water rates.
Yeah, exactly, and I'm not sure how to do that, but
Yeah, I don't either.
because we have the high peak demand problem, if everybody was just paying the low tier rate, we wouldn't cover our costs. So some of the actual cost is being covered in those higher tiers. So it might be, we either need a way to find what the cost is, or maybe it's the second tier. I'm not sure what that number is right now, but it's definitely not the first tier.
So maybe we can, as part of the water rate study, the subcommittee can make recommendation to the ordinance committee on that. Okay, so let's move on to,
Mr. Chair,
yes, sir.
if I can interject something about the ordinance process. I'm going to say this in council, but not all of you are going to be there, or you're going to watch it or listen to it. And so just want you to know that I'm going to call you out to council that how great this is. Many people for many years have done ordinance looks and rewrites and edits looking through the soda straw. And it's phenomenal that y'all are looking at how does it fit with other ordinances? How does it agree or disagree with other ordinances? How does it fit in the overall big picture? And I can't thank you enough. Again, I'm going to call this out to council and try to let the world know, but not all of you would have heard that. So I want to just thank you in here for doing that, because it's a huge deal. It really is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that. I do appreciate as well, a little work that subcommittee on is doing as well. I know it's a lot of work. I know Orange 54 is going to be a big job, so thank y'all. Okay, so now we move on to discuss and make recommendations on water lease project. So that's Commissioner Haldeman and Dr. Carmichael. I think y'all met with a couple people, city staff. Okay, who wants to take the lead? Here are the water leases, so on the screen. Mike.
Thanks. So this was it was a real learning experience getting to meet with y'all on the water leases, and you really took time to explain it to me, and I really appreciate it. And so I had to break it down in my mind kind of after we left, what our options were and what the advantages and disadvantages for each option that we had. And, the way I looked at it, simplicity, and please correct me if I misinterpreted anything. And I know Dr. Carmichael's going to add more about the Trinity, and I believe you were going to add more on the Trinity discussion and Edwards. But so I think our options are we let these leases expire, just don't renew them. The big advantage is that could save us approximately $10,000 a year at the current lease rates, assuming that we could renew those at the rates that they existed. And of course, the disadvantages, and it took me a little bit to understand this, there are some disadvantages of doing that. And I think, I'm kind of going through my notes here. Daily pumping capacity could be affected by that. From what I understand, you had mentioned earlier today, I believe, that there might be restrictions on how much we can pump based off of the Garden Ridge Water Company, how much we can pump a day if restrictions are put in place. But we'll have that additional, I think it was like 22 million gallons over the year to use.
Is it 60, yeah, it's 65 acre feet.
Okay, sorry, I just converted everything
Yeah,
together.
no, you
That
did,
makes more sense to me. But that we have that, and so the advantages of having that lease are it can up our daily amount if we ever get into any kind of water pumping issues or restriction issues from how much we can pump. We'll always have that buffer there, even on a daily. And of course, the year, we ended up with 22 million gallons, I believe, of extra. Because I didn't understand it at all when we started.
Yeah, if I can, yeah, because with the leases, we start up here before water restrictions. Without the leases, we'd start here before water restrictions and then go down to there. Here we start here and then we go down, and we can keep going down, but we start at a higher level because we have the leases on the Edwards. And there is no restriction on the Trinity, which is what Jacob's pumping now, to see what we can do.
But currently, we like, according to so far this year and last year, there's never been a instance where we actually would have needed to rely on these leases, I don't think. Is that a fair statement? I mean, it's kind of an insurance policy, like you said, to get either the daily capacity up higher. That'll be an option if we keep the leases, and the yearly capacity if we do have issues. Is that a pretty accurate analysis?
Yeah, so I mean, the more water we have, obviously, the more of a buffer we have, and that was, I mean, that's always going to be the case. What we're analyzing right now is we're using the Trinity as a primary on both municipal well site and the Schoenthal, and we're going to pump and see at the hottest part of the year what the Trinity wells can do, because there are things to take in consideration like max flow, max pumping, and then how the Edwards has to supplement for the Trinity, what that looks like, analyze that data to really know like a hard stop number of what we must have, and then you can make your cushions. So it's, do you want a little cushion, or how much of a cushion you want? Do you want 100% over the top of what you can do? So if you can do, 100 million gallons in 1 year, do you want 200 million gallons at the year? So it's what cushion that we feel comfortable with. And the summer hottest part is going to help with the daily demand of how much that our Trinity wells can do without the Edwards. So that's kind of what we're looking at now. Does that answer your question?
Well, it does, and it does. From what I remember, I think we ran the numbers real quick to see, we're getting like 22 million gallons available. Use, I don't know if it was 100 million a year, 200 million a year, whatever. It was a small percentage of that actual total, the way I kind of got that. And it was, I remember running the numbers on the percentage, but I didn't write it down on the actual amount we use per year and, how much buffer that gave us. Did it just give us, a small amount? It seems like to me, I think this is something, and I think the other two options, we don't renew the lease. We renew the leases for another 5 years, just the whole contract for 5 years out, or see if we can extend. There's wording in the current lease to extend year by year by year. We're going to see how the new water system, if we get the AMI system, if that cuts down drastically on water use. There could be a lot of things in the future. Some of the disadvantages, I believe, were brought up as far as, it might be hard to renew these leases if we drop them now. That was kind of brought up of some of the disadvantages of,
I think some of the disadvantages, because, the leases to the Edwards are on different properties over the Edwards aquifer. But once we get the lease and we get that acre feet of water, it's transferred to one of our wells. To the Edwards well, and then we get that capacity. We have not run a pipeline out to Comal County somewhere. It's Jacob gets it right here. And another interesting fact that Nancy brought up was the city of Garden Ridge somehow has got an ordinance that when we incorporate or builders come in and want to build a subdivision, they have to bring additional Edwards water rights with them. And the same with, I guess, some of the development that's going up on Nacogdoches. So one of the thoughts is that we keep these leases for the next 3 to 5 years while we see how that development goes and how much more Edwards we can bring in through developers who, when they come in, and then revisit whether we need the leases, depending on how much more capacity we get through the builders. Because everyone who builds a subdivision, townhomes or whatever within Garden Ridge has to bring Edwards water rights with them when they do that. And that's another reason we probably need to keep these water rights, is that there are other people out there with the same situation that are looking for water rights, who, if we give these leases up, we'll probably snatch them up real quick, probably purchase them outright for their use in the development someplace, because the amount of water water rights in the Edwards is limited, as I understand it. So I think it's important that we renew these leases right now while we have the opportunity, and then 3 to 5 years from now, as we see what kind of additional Edwards we've brought in and what capacities we now have, we can revisit whether we need the leases. I'm sorry, Jogo.
No, sir, I appreciate, that was a much better explanation than I was given, and I appreciate you adding in those additional, anybody that comes in is going to have to bring more water with them, so they're not going to put an extra burden on what we've already got. And I like the way that's something I didn't think about, is renewing the leases, and you'd brought that up, of that we may not get these leases back if we give them up. And we talked about either not doing the leases, not renewing at all, seeing if we could extend the existing releases because they had wording in there about just extending the way they were, or going for another 5 years. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you fine. Were you able to approach the lessees and see if they'd be open to renewing or negotiate another lease?
No, I have not, sir. Was not able to reach them.
So to me, I think, I think once we find out that information, we could probably make a better, if these are available, if we can extend or what our options are, because we're just kind of speculating at our options and our costs right now, assuming that they're not going to go up any, assuming they'll let us extend the existing leases or just sign the new 5-year if it's pretty much the same as we've got. We've got that big buffer. It's not a whole lot of money, but it does, more importantly to me, I think, than the 22 million gallons extra a year, if it does help us on a daily basis, if we get there, Mr. Parsons, I think you had identified times where you think it can help us on a daily basis, pumping up if we're using too much, and maybe we have restrictions on how much we can pump for the day. If there's a lot of factors that could come into play for that.
Yeah, so I appreciate you asking me. So there are some things that we have in place and some documents, and as soon as we have them, I'll show you. If you recall, last month I was showing how much Edwards we have and how much Trinity we could potentially pump. And in those charts, it gives some data. I think there's a couple things that we need to consider before making a firm decision. Is can we get them back? How much are they going to cost? And what is the data that we're going to see after the hottest part of the year? Looking at the Trinity as a primary, is this a factor? Is the 68 acre feet worth keeping? If not, I also do know that to some points of once we lose those leases, we may not get them back. I was already approached after seeing, hearing that these water leases may not be renewed, of other cities that were interested in looking at them. So that's also a possibility. So I believe we need all the data in order to make the best decision.
Okay, now, Jacob, you also said that on our above-ground storage, the elevated tanks, that we can fill from the Edwards easier, or we can than from the Trinity?
So with our wells, Edwards water is easier to pump out of the ground, and I can get more GPM, so gallons per minute. And that means if I can get it out of the ground, I can chlorinate it and I can send it into our distribution. So that really helps with our peak demands. Our Edwards water is important to us. And as you can see here on our chart, with the blue, orange, and gray being the past 3 years of, I want to say 17, 18, and 19. This is the year 2000, so you'll see the yellow line being the year 2000, and then your blue line is your average. And if you can go to the, scroll down, I apologize, scroll down. This is what we're using in Edwards and Trinity. Trinity is in blue, Edwards is in orange for the last, from 17 to today, I should say, to July. And that's kind of the motion we've gone through of how much we've actually used out of the well. So the completed amount is how much we used each month, but how much did we pull out of Edwards? How much did we pull out of Trinity? And then can we go to the Edwards Trinity usage? Is that the one? Go scroll down. I apologize. Go to the Edwards loss. Nope. No. We'll get it. Go to the left one. Yearly use. Okay, right here. So right here we have our Trinity and Edwards use, and it's in the same kind of bar graph. In 2017, 2018, 2019, we're seeing how much Trinity and or Edwards we did use, and to the right is how much we have available. If we were able to pump everything that we were capable of pumping, to the right is what we're capable of doing. And so the orange is the Edwards, and it's a set amount because we only have so many water rights. That at times diminishes depending on on the heat and what stage we're at, right? But if you were to take that completely away, you can see that our Edwards can satisfy all of our needs. The problem with just going off this chart and using Trinity is a couple things, is we need a redundancy, that's one. Two is we also need to know what the peak demand and peak flow is at those times. And what I've seen so far, because I looked today, is we've been able to look at our usage from our Trinity wells, and did our Edwards wells come on to pump water? And they did. So we know that the Trinity wells can't keep up with the demand, so we do need some Edwards, or we do need something else to supplement during those peak times. And so that's either going to be out of storage, so we have to build more storage, or it's going to be more wells, so we have to have some. So that's what I'm talking about, the data we're looking at. If you scroll down, you can see right here, these are the water that we have capable without the leases. So the Edwards diminishes just a little bit. It's not that great of a diminish, and we can still cover all the water usage with the Trinity minus that. So it's not all that much. However, it's that demand. And then the question, if you're weighing the pros and cons, is do we have enough Edwards? Yes. What's going to happen to the Edwards will be needed in the future. That's the unknown, and that's a variable that you're going to be discussing.
And I think we looked at, was it 45 cents per person to keep those leases per resident of Garden Ridge?
I believe it was 45 cents.
Yeah, it's pretty minimal to keep them, and so I'd hate to lose them until we determine what our future looks like.
Thank y'all for that research. Y'all done a lot of good work. Any questions from Mr. Harsberg?
Just real quick, this from Nancy, really, what's the decision point that this commission would need a recommendation in order to be able, for you to do your part and the council to have time to make their decision?
The leases expire December 31st of this year.
Yeah, so how much lead time do you need for the negotiations, really what it comes to? Because, I mean, we're August right now, so.
We're in August, yes. September, October should, preferably by the end of September, have some direction.
So we basically have a month for us to make a determination and then get it through council and have time to do what you need to do. Is that correct?
I think so.
The second question is one of these random things that just popped in my head, so I might be completely off base. But if we have these leases, does the law allow them to be subleased?
I would have to look at our lease agreement. I don't recall if it allows a sublease or not.
So, and the reason I ask is I know we're trying to promote development. If we ever were in a situation where a company wanted to come in and they were just short of their water rights requirement, is that, I don't know if that gives the city any options or not to have that available.
The water rights have to be purchased.
They have to be transferable water rights.
Yeah, can't be leased.
Right.
Well, I meant if we have it, can we then?
We
let someone else
don't. We
purchase?
just we have leases. They're not transferable.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. So apples and oranges.
My last questions? Mr. Mueller?
You mentioned the price of these leases, 45 cents per resident. That's assuming the prices remain the same, right? Do we expect these lease prices to go up at all, or?
That's a question that I will have to find out from the leaseor to see if they're willing to extend that lease at that same price.
But we don't, has there been a large change in demand? Is there any reason to believe that it's going to go up a whole lot? That would be concerned about? Okay.
No, really, I'm not. For the period of time we've been leasing with Mr. Friesenhahn, he's never gone up on his price. And Mr. Lohman as well. So I haven't seen a price increase on either one. We've been with the larger lease much longer than we have the small lease, so I would not anticipate a price increase, but of course, we don't know until we start talking to them.
Thank you.
Mr. Bullock, any questions? I have a couple of questions. How does the leases with the, concerning the Czar's Pool and also the Bracken Fire Department, how does those work?
When we were going into stages, water reduction stages, Keith Starr's Pools was transferring 1 acre feet of water rights to us. They would lease it and then transfer it to us for that year so that they could have enough water to fill the pools that they were building. Since we have not been going into, or have not gone into restrictions over about the past 2 years, they have not really renewed that lease. Bracken Volunteer Fire Department, we have been giving them, leasing them 0.3 acre feet of water for their firefighting needs.
But Bracken does serve as Garden Ridge.
Yes.
Is there any action we need to take at this point, or would you need to wait until they contact you, or what? I'm asking.
If you want me to direct by consensus to contact the leasors and see if they would be willing to release, to renew the leases and at what price, I will be glad to do that.
Do we need to make a motion or just?
She said by consensus, we can tell her.
I think
Okay.
by,
Consensus, so.
I consent.
Can I add to that real quick? Do we want to even entertain the idea of extending the leases that we currently have, since that is an option in the current contract? Or just go with the new 5 years if the price is similar to what we have now?
Again, we need to, anything we do have to be a recommendation to the city council, right? So.
yes.
Well, I guess I
Yeah.
meant just
Yeah,
as far
so-
as your discussion with them.
How about if I bring you back, I will make contact with the leasors and see which way they may be willing to go and at what price.
Okay.
And have that for you, hopefully I can have that for you for your September meeting.
Main thing is to be ready before the year ends, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That would be my consensus, so that way we can make a recommendation to council at the next meeting.
yeah, at appropriate time. Everybody?
Yes, please.
Everybody on the side, so yes, you have consensus.
Okay.
Thank y'all, I appreciate all the work y'all done there, because I mean, that's a little bit a good question. Last couple, I remember last year discussing about leases, and it was just a quick, don't touch it, but I mean, y'all did some good work. I appreciate city staff as well on that. Okay, so now moving on to the update of commissioners' activities and projects. We covered quite a bit of projects already. What I have on the list here next is to bring up is commercial water rates. And I know Commissioner Mueller and I have been discussing this, brought up last time, and we had a little discussion this week. So I'll let Mr. Mueller fill us in on a little bit first here, then I can add.
We talked about this last month a bit, and we had a couple of areas that we're trying to look at. We're wondering about separate water commercial rates. We sort of had an initial idea about different water rates for different size meters, and I think that was we decided to push that over to the rate subcommittee to look at that, and then we're going to look a little bit at the commercial rates. So as we dug into the specifics of what I did is I took snapshots from the past year and looked at the water consumption. And for the most part, for the businesses here, the majority of the businesses are very low water consumption, with the exception of two. Well, three if you count the water leak that First Bank had, but we sort of threw that out. The other two are the housing, housing at-home care facilities, Solaris, and there's one other that I can't remember off the top of my head. But both of those have what you would expect for a large number of people living there and larger consumption rates. So it really is a split between the businesses and then these care facilities, and very, very different for those. So applying a flat rate to either one of those to commercial businesses doesn't match with those very well. So I don't think we would recommend that unless it was a middle tier. But what I think what we will end up doing is, I don't think it would be in our best interest to do that. Other than, I think keeping the tiered rates as they are perhaps will be better. We'll go back and get some more data, but that is sort of where I was after looking at the snapshot of the last year. Mr. Chairman, do you have anything?
Yes, I think based on that, and we talked about what, meter sizes, and, since we worked on the AMI meter project, we saw the cost of the meters. And just, you have on the list with, the package that the engineers provide us. But if you look at the cost of the meters, for the Comstruct meters, 3/4 inch are $289.50. The 1 inch are $315. Then when you go to 1.5 inch, they're $787. That's 2.7 times the cost of a 3/4 inch meters. And the 2 inch meters are $862. So that's 3 times a 3/4 inch meter. So, one thought is to go ahead and do the base rate based on meter size, but maybe just use the same tier rating for all of them. And looked at other cities, and that's typically what they do. They have a different base rate, but then the tier rates stay the same, no matter what meter size you have. So that's something we can consider. And that'd be one thought that and then instead of doing commercial rates, we just do by meter size. It's kind of my thinking. That's what we had talked about last time, I think, too.
Yes, sir. I think that was what I didn't do a very good job describing, is perhaps just keep the commercial rates the same as the residential rates and keep them tiered, and then charge different for the meter sizes.
Meter size. Yeah, but right now, I think and the work that I think I got from Cat was we have 10 1.5 meters and 9 2-inch meters at this point. We'll have to do some confirming when we get through it, all to see what we have. But, yeah, we'll have to do that. And the cost of meters really should be the basis for that base cost looking at. Make it easier for us to do the rate calculation, the water rate calculations as well when we do that. One idea is that when I talked to Kat was right now in the system, in our billing system, we have, I think, either 11 or 12 different rate structures. We only use 2. We only use inside and outside rates, but we have a lot of options. She can actually create one for 1.5 meters and one for 2 inch without creating any problem. Just move those accounts over to get us ready for it. And then we could, then we'll all do is change the base rate when we get down to it. And one thought I'm doing is maybe going and do that so I can get the water consumption numbers in line with that. So I would like to do that if possible. Is that something we can do, in advance? Would that be a problem, I guess, at this point, if we want to do that to help us with the water consumption numbers? Nope. Is that a problem, Ms. Kane?
No, I mean, we will get you the information you need so you can do your work on your water rates.
When we do the water rates, we do water consumption numbers.
Yes.
And, I got an idea for the last 12 months, but we need to get them after the October billing system is for that. But if we create the 2 new structures in there and go ahead and move those 1.5 meters and 2 inch meters, then I can get the water consumption for those users in that calculation. So that's something I'll work with maybe a utility clerk too. Get her into the system, so I'll do that.
That's
Okay. Do we need
that works.
anything? Is that, okay. And just on the water rates review for next year, for this coming year, we have to do that in October again. The plan is to do it in October and then present to City Council in November. One thing I had is the water fund budget was approved on the special meeting for August 13th for City Council. So no changes from the proposal from the last month. So those numbers will be used for the water fund expenses and for the debt service numbers that we use in the water rates. Like I said, I already ran numbers for the last 12 months, but we need to update them. I just want to give an idea. Our consumption for the last 12 months is a lot higher than for fiscal year 2019, considerably higher. Of course, we also have had 3 million gallons since May of last year that we actually had leaks adjustments on. Not necessarily leak adjustments, but that I found that we had leaks on. So we need to consider that those not water that we're normally going to sell. We hope not to have in the future. So we need to take that into account and remove those. Otherwise, we have a fictitious number of what we could potentially sell and not have a higher income than we thought we did. So I got to be careful with the small false revenue fund there. Anyway, come October 1st, we'll get the updated, I guess more like October 10th or something like that. We'll get the numbers right. But anyway, after the October 1st billing, should I say, we'll get the new numbers there, and then we'll get the new tuning categories. I have been doing some research of water rates in the area cities to see what all our areas have been doing. And we'll have that in our presentation when we do go for the new rental rates. But just for give you a look, I looked at 7 cities around the area. Garden Ridge is the second lowest when you're looking at 0 to 17,000 gallons consumption. We're the third lowest between 17,000 and 35,000 gallons consumption. We're the fourth lowest between 35,000 and 75,000, and we're in the middle or on the high side above 75,000. So on the lower end, we're really ranked real well with the other cities. And a lot of those cities stop their tier levels at 20,000, 30,000, 50,000. They have just a flat rate after that. So that just tells you how much more water our residents have used here. That's one reason we have the higher rates. So it really, the whole idea of a water rate structure is to encourage water conservation. I think it does a real job, and I think we've done, I think our water structure is set up that way, and we actually were very competitive with our neighboring cities. Anyway, I'll have that data compiled, and we'll have it in the whenever we do go for the water rates, so we can actually use that for City Council to look at the new rates. Any questions on comments on either one of those two discussions?
Note that
You want to add anything?
in order to have something for this commission in October, so we can make a recommendation for the council in November, we got to start in September.
Actually, I've already started entering some of the numbers already, so
Good.
we just haven't met yet, but I've been meaning to.
You made a comment about October, and my heart went like that, because I remember how much time it took the last time.
Well, last time we didn't start till October. So we actually have a little head start. We actually have more time because at least now we understand how the system works. Last time we started October 1st and trying to understand, actually it was October, it was late September, that we actually started thinking about even learning how the water markets spreadsheet worked. Now we start to think I understand it and I can follow it and I know what changing numbers work. So we do have a jump start on it this time. We hope not have to meet every day for, 2 weeks before the October meeting. Okay. Is there any other, any other project activities? We covered quite a few already today. Any other project activities that anybody has an update on? I'll leave it open here, Okay, none. So let's go to 4. Discuss and make possible recommendation on future meetings or or direction regarding Water Commission activities or projects. I think we already talked about some action plans already anyway, so we'll just follow on those. I don't think we have anything new. Okay, moving on to item 4, ordinance 210. Discuss and make recommendations related to application of ordinance revisions to commission members. I will say that City Council agreed by consensus to waive the provision in ordinance 210 that requires commissioners to attend 2 City Council regular meetings each calendar year during the current public health emergency. Okay, I know some of your commissioners already met that requirement, but that's been waived at this point. I still would encourage you to watch the city council meetings live stream if you don't attend. So, does anybody else have any other discussion on 210? Okay. Future agenda items, D. Any future agenda items? We've got a pretty good list going already as it is. It's routine. No new addition items? I don't have anything. Okay. And again, so let's see, next one too. Announce date and time for location for next meeting, September 22nd, 2020, at 6 p.m. here in City Hall. Number 7, citizen comment period. Number 2, we have no one in the audience, so I think we can waive that one. So number 8, adjournment. I think that includes everything on the agenda. So can I get a motion to adjourn? I have a motion to adjourn, second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, no. Meeting is adjourned at 9:10. Thank you all, gentlemen, for a great meeting, good discussions. Appreciate all the hard work you do during between meetings, so.